Chapter 250. What should he do? Seeing the others return quickly, Yang Tian was not satisfied and was very depressed. There were large pieces of stellar crystals above. Although the shapes were irregular, there were a lot of them. If they were gathered together, a small piece of stellar crystals would probably have more than 10,000 standard-sized stellar crystals. At this time, the little blue dragon was still flying up with its eyes wide open. Although it was dangerous, the little blue dragon was not afraid. Zizi, at this time, the closest red mist-like sphere suddenly released a thick electric arc. It almost touched the little blue dragon and Yang Tian. Collect, there was not much time to think. Yang Tian shouted, raised his hand, and issued an order to the storage bracelet. The small piece of stellar crystals above his head was less than 50 meters away from Yang Tian. It had reached the limit of the storage bracelet's distance. Yang Tian wanted to try and see if he could collect these stellar crystals. Environment influence, collect, fail. When Yang Tian issued the order, the storage bracelet sent a notification to Yang Tian. When the storage bracelet was collecting items, it also had certain requirements for the surrounding environment. If the gravitational force of the planet was too strong and exceeded the storage bracelet's limit, it would not be able to collect it. For example, a small spaceship, as long as the storage bracelet had enough space, it could be stored and stored in the universe. But on the planet, it might not be able to be collected. At this time, the resistance around Yang Tian was very strong. It was like being at the bottom of the sea tens of thousands of meters deep on Earth. The object was under great pressure. Naturally, the storage bracelet could not collect these stellar crystals. Although the collection failed, an idea suddenly appeared in Yang Tian's mind. Because he suddenly remembered that he could try using his spiritual power. When the storage bracelet failed to be retrieved, Yang Tian opened his mind and opened his mind power world. In Yang Tian's perception, countless little blue dragons formed by his mind power rushed out of his mind and flew toward the irregular star crystals. During this process, Yang Tian realized that the mental power he released was not affected by the strong pressure around him, and it easily wrapped around the stellar crystals. The stellar crystal, which had been wrapped up by Yang Tian's mind power, flew rapidly towards Yang Tian. When it was less than 10 meters away from Yang Tian softly shouted, "Withdraw." This time, the storage bracelet was no longer disturbed. A large number of star crystals poured into Yang Tian's storage space. This process took less than 30 seconds. About 10,000 stellar crystals were put into Yang Tian's storage bracelet. It was a great harvest. Xiaolong, let's go back. Although there were still many stellar crystals, those dangerous fog-like spheres were less than 50 meters away from Yang Tian and the others. Yang Tian did not want to take any more risks and immediately said to the little blue dragon. The little blue dragon immediately turned around and quickly dove down. Qinglong, at this time, a few thousand meters away, two fog-like spheres came into contact with each other again, and a violent explosion occurred. This kind of explosion quickly spread in all directions, faster than the speed of sound. When the chain of explosions reached Yang Tian and the others, the little blue dragon just happened to land on the ground with Yang Tian and hid behind a giant rock. In order to not be hit by the dense red lightning, the little blue dragon quickly transformed into a mini Xiaolong. The explosion in the sky continued for an indeterminate amount of time. Yang Tian immediately took out a football-sized stellar crystal from his storage bracelet for the little blue dragon to eat. One man and one dragon, just like before, waited. The explosion in the sky created a strong energy fluctuation. Those stellar crystals that were not swallowed by the red fog-like spheres were disturbed and quickly fell from the sky like rain. This kind of situation caused some people to ignore the danger and come out from hiding under the rocks to pick up the fallen stellar crystals. This was an extremely dangerous action. Many people were hit by the red lightning as soon as they came out from hiding, and their bodies exploded into a bloody mist. Looking at the situation outside, Yang Tian could not help but shake his head. The attraction of stellar crystals to cultivators was just too strong. And these people were simply out of their minds. A small piece of stellar crystals above Yang Tian's head had already been collected by him. There were very few stellar crystals that fell. Even if there were a lot of them, Yang Tian would not rush out to pick them up without caring about his own life. This time, the explosion lasted longer than the first one. After about 15 minutes, the explosion in the sky finally stopped. When Yang Tian came out from his hiding place, he saw that many people had already come out. They were bending down to look for stellar crystals among the rubble. At this time, Yang Tian saw a strange beast that looked like a fox. This beast kept jumping among the rubble, digging out stellar crystals one after another, and bringing them to its owner. Its owner then put them into his storage space. In addition to this strange beast, there were also some small strange beasts that could fly. They were hovering at a low altitude, and when they discovered the star crystals, they suddenly swooped down, picked up the star crystals on the ground, and flew back to their masters. Those without pet beasts could only look for them on their own. Many people who came here did not have storage bracelets or storage rings, but they did have something that looked like a black jar hanging from their waist. This black jar was probably a type of storage space. When collecting things, someone had to put them inside. If the stellar crystals were too big, they would not be able to fit inside and would have to be smashed. Under these circumstances, there were still people who wanted to rob others, trying to get stellar crystals from them. The targets of the robbery were almost all people who had this kind of black earthen jar. Why was that? Yang Tian saw that after a person was killed, the robber smashed the jar. As the jar shattered, the stellar crystals inside suddenly appeared in a pile of black jar debris. All kinds of strange scenes appeared in front of Yang Tian's eyes. The little blue dragon, who was lying on Yang Tian's shoulder, also opened its eyes wide and looked at everything curiously. It almost forgot that the red spheres in the sky would produce many stellar crystals after they exploded. Yang Tian only reacted when a blue light flashed across the corner of Yang Tian's eyes. The little blue dragon transformed again and flew into the sky with Yang Tian on its back. At this time, besides Yang Tian and the little blue dragon, almost no one flew into the sky to collect the stellar crystals floating in the air. This was because to them, collecting stellar crystals in the sky was much more difficult and dangerous than on the ground. What Yang Tian did not know was that when they were collecting stellar crystals, a pair of cold eyes had been watching him and the little blue dragon. The owner of this pair of eyes was Ao Chu. When Yang Tian and the little blue dragon flew a few hundred meters into the air and tried their best to move forward, Ao Chu also flew into the air and rushed toward Yang Tian's location. Chapter 251. Yang Tian opened his spiritual force world and his spiritual force surged out, rolling up a small piece of stellar crystal towards himself. The amount of stellar crystal that Yang Tian collected this time was at least a third more than the first time. With the experience from the first time, his speed was also much faster than before. This made Yang Tian very excited. Although it was dangerous in the sky, the harvest was much more than on the ground. He didn't need to search through the cracks in the rocks or fight with others. If he could keep collecting here without any accidents, Yang Tian would soon become a rich person in the universe. He didn't know why there were so many stellar crystals here, but he didn't know if the source of the stellar crystals had anything to do with these red fog-like spheres. Many questions popped up in Yang Tian's mind. But soon, Yang Tian discarded the questions in his mind. The most important thing now was to collect the stellar crystals. That was the most important thing. There were many secrets in the universe and countless questions that he couldn't understand at the moment. After collecting a small piece of stellar crystal, Yang Tian glanced at the red fog-like spheres above his head. He estimated in his mind and was confident that if he moved fast enough, he could collect them again. Xiaolong, to the right. Yang Tian immediately reminded the little blue dragon. But before he finished speaking, he stopped because he caught a glimpse of a figure rushing towards him. This person's speed was very fast. Almost as soon as Yang Tian noticed Ao Chu had already appeared about 50 meters away from Yang Tian. He hovered in the air and stared coldly at Yang Tian. Sensing the hostility of the approaching person, the little blue dragon turned his head and stared coldly at Ao Chu, ready to attack at any time. At this moment, Ao Chu was full of murderous intent. He didn't hide his hostility at all. Even if Yang Tian found out, it didn't matter. Yang Tian. Ao Chu stopped to size up Yang Tian and said indifferently. Ao Chu's voice was extremely soft, but it was clearly transmitted into Yang Tian's ears. You are. Ao Chu knew Yang Tian, but Yang Tian didn't know Ao Chu. He looked at Ao Chu and asked with a frown. At this time, Yang Tian was already holding the saber in his hand, ready to fight at any time. In the short time that Ao Chu appeared, the red mist-like spheres in the sky had already pressed down. They were very close to Yang Tian and the little blue dragon. The little blue dragon stared at Ao Chu as it slowly descended. Being here, Ao Chu was also under great pressure. Of course, he knew that these red mist-like spheres were very dangerous, so he slowly descended. Qin Fei, do you know her? Ao Chu did not answer Yang Tian. Instead, he asked Yang Tian with a smile. Hearing Ao Chu's question, Yang Tian was shocked. He opened his eyes wide and asked anxiously, You know Xiao Fei? Where is she now? At this time, Ao Chu was 100% sure that the Yang Tian in front of him was the Yang Tian he was looking for. Under Yang Tian's expectant gaze, Ao Chu smiled and said, I know Qin Fei. Of course, Qin Fei told me. She told me to tell you that you don't have to look for her because she's already married, and she's now my woman. Ha ha. Ao Chu laughed loudly after saying that. Of course, Ao Chu wanted to anger Yang Tian and make Yang Tian lose his cool. In such a dangerous environment, once one lost their cool, it was very easy to self-destruct. Ao Chu's realm had grown all the way to the star level, and his combat experience was very rich. However, as soon as Ao Chu finished speaking, Yang Tian couldn't help but laugh. Yang Tian's reaction was different from what Ao Chu expected. In Ao Chu's imagination, when Yang Tian heard this news, he should be shocked, angry, regretful, and disappointed. The emotions of a heartbroken man should all appear on Yang Tian. Because that goddess called Qin Fei was too perfect in Ao Chu's eyes. If it was him, he would definitely be like that. Yang Tian laughed, but the smile on Ao Chu's face gradually disappeared. What are you laughing at? Is it very funny? Seeing Yang Tian laughing, Ao Chu said coldly. Yang Tian let out a long breath. Of course it's funny. You don't know that when you looked at me, your eyes were filled with intense jealousy. Your ability to lie is too clumsy. You might not understand the feelings between Xiao Fei and me. If she wanted to leave me, she would definitely tell me in person and not let someone pass the message. The word jealousy that Yang Tian said hit Ao Chu's sore spot. As soon as Yang Tian finished speaking, Ao Chu's eyes flashed coldly. He gritted his teeth and said, You're looking for death. The first to lose his cool was Ao Chu. While the two were talking, they were only 200 meters away from the ground, and the surrounding pressure was about to disappear. In such a situation, Ao Chu's movements were very fast. Before the word death disappeared from his mouth, he suddenly appeared above Yang Tian's head and slapped down on Yang Tian's head. Woo! In that instant, Yang Tian felt a powerful force pressing down from above. The force was too strong. Yang Tian instantly knew that he could only dodge and not take it head-on. Facing Ao Chu's powerful attack, the little blue dragon's reaction was very fast. With a swing of its tail, it took Yang Tian away from Ao Chu's attack range. Boom! Ao Chu's attack missed, and the force of the palm hit the ground, causing the ground to tremble. Countless rocks flew up and sputtered in all directions. A few people who were picking up stellar crystals nearby were caught in the crossfire. After being hit by the rocks, their bodies were thrown to the side and they were quite injured. During this process, Yang Tian was surprised to find that after Ao Chu's palm hit the rocks, it left a giant palm print with a diameter of 10 meters on the ground. What a powerful attack! Yang Tian's eyes widened. He was shocked. If he did not dodge it, that attack would have injured him and the little blue dragon. Who was this powerful guy? Until now, Ao Chu had not told Yang Tian his name. However, Yang Tian knew that if this person came to kill him, it must have something to do with Qin Fei. It was all thanks to the little blue dragon's fast speed that he was able to dodge that attack. On that purple planet, the little blue dragon had been trained by Grandfather Hong for half a year, and the benefits were finally showing. At this time, Yang Tian could not help but wonder if that mysterious old man had already predicted what would happen today. At the same time, Yang Tian remembered that when he left, Grandfather Hong had also told him that there would be a small problem. Was this a small problem? For Yang Tian, it was a catastrophe. Ao Chu's attack made Yang Tian realize that Ao Chu was at least one level stronger than him. After his attack missed, Ao Chu turned around and chased after Yang Tian. Hissed, as the little blue dragon was flying at high speed, Yang Tian saw Ao Chu coming at him. He stood on the little blue dragon's back and slashed at Ao Chu. A crescent-shaped wind blade shot out from the blade and rushed toward Ao Chu. When he held the blade and slashed, Yang Tian began to transform. The power of the Dragon Ball in his body filled his entire body, and he began to quickly grow scales. Chapter 252. Peng. Facing Yang Tian's red wind blade, Ao Chu threw out a punch. The power from his fist collided with the wind blade, and a thunderous sound was heard. Xiaolong, quick! Yang Tian gritted his teeth and said while Ao Chu's body was still. At this time, Yang Tian had not completed his transformation, and his defense was not at its strongest. When fighting with such a powerful enemy, no matter if it was strength or defense, he had to be at his peak. The little blue dragon swung its tail and straightened its body. Like an arrow leaving the bow, it suddenly increased its speed. In the blink of an eye, it became a small dot in Ao Chu's sight. The little blue dragon's flying method was the fastest. In fact, its body was not straight in the process of flying. Instead, it was swinging at an extremely fast speed. Looking at Yang Tian and the little blue dragon, who were about to disappear from his sight, Ao Chu smiled coldly. His body moved and he quickly chased after them. In such a dangerous environment, there was actually a battle between powerful people? Many people saw the situation in the sky, and their eyes widened as they raised their vigilance. They did not care who won between Yang Tian and Ao Chu, but they were worried that the battle between the two would affect the environment of this world. They all knew that this was a broken world, and it could not afford to be tossed around. In the eyes of many people, the figures of Yang Tian and Ao Chu were like meteors in the sky, and they disappeared in a flash. Yang Tian sat cross-legged on the little blue dragon's back. He used his spiritual power to stabilize his body and tried to calm his mind. To him, this was the most dangerous enemy he had faced. So fast. In the process of chasing Yang Tian, although he was getting closer and closer to Yang Tian and the little blue dragon, Ao Chu was very surprised. Judging from the aura, whether it was Yang Tian or the little blue dragon, their realms were much lower than his. Such a weakling should be easy to kill. At this time, Ao Chu could not help but grit his teeth. If he had not lost a level, that palm strike just now would have directly killed Yang Tian. Hatred rose and Ao Chu suddenly increased his speed. In Yang Tian's eyes, Ao Chu's figure came closer and closer until he could clearly see the expression on Ao Chu's face. This expression was filled with hatred and madness. Yang Tian didn't know why this person hated him so much. At this moment, Yang Tian had already completed his transformation. His 4 limbs had turned into dragon claws, and 2 small bumps had bulged on his head. It was even more obvious than the last time he faced Gao Yuan. The skin under Yang Tian's clothes was already covered with scales. After the transformation, Yang Tian's aura suddenly became stronger. Sensing the change in Yang Tian's aura, Ao Chu was very surprised. Yang Tian's aura was almost close to his. At least, it had surpassed the planetary state and Star King state. After a period of recovery, Ao Chu was now at the peak of the planetary state and Star Lord state. He was 1 level higher than Yang Tian. This was just a judgment in terms of realms, but in terms of combat power, it was still unknown who would win and who would lose. As for Yang Tian's transformation, Ao Chu, who had experienced countless battles, was already used to it. During battle, there were many people in the universe who transformed even more strangely than Yang Tian. Just as Ao Chu was about to catch up, Yang Tian suddenly stood up, held the blade with both claws, and slashed at Ao Chu again. Hiss! At this moment, the wind blade released by Yang Tian emitted a sharp sound. At such a close distance, Yang Tian didn't even use his mental force to condense this red wind blade. Ao Chu could clearly feel that this attack from Yang Tian was much stronger than the previous one. Ao Chu didn't dare to take it head-on and dodge to the side. During such high-speed pursuit, a slight pause would increase the distance between the two sides. When Ao Chu dodged and stopped for a moment, Yang Tian was already a few hundred meters away from him. From the moment Ao Chu appeared and wanted to kill Yang Tian until now, less than 5 minutes had passed. At this time, the mist-like spheres in the sky were already very dense. They could collide at any time and cause an explosion. No one could predict where the explosion would start. During this battle, Yang Tian didn't forget to pay attention to the situation in the sky. When he discovered that the mist-like spheres were about to start a new round of explosions, he immediately said to the little blue dragon, "Xiao Long, let's go down." The little blue dragon also knew that it was very dangerous to fly in the sky at this time, so he dove down. Boom! Just as the little blue dragon swooped down, less than 1,000 meters away from them, 2 red mist-like spheres collided and caused a violent explosion. The speed of this explosion was faster than the speed of sound. If Yang Tian and the others heard the sound of the explosion, it meant that the spheres above their heads had already exploded. The light of the explosion was immediately noticed by the little blue dragon and Yang Tian. When the sound of the explosion reached Yang Tian's ears, the little blue dragon had already taken Yang Tian to hide under a white boulder. There was nothing else in this world except for boulders. They could find a place to hide at any time. As long as they weren't directly struck by the lightning falling from the sky, their lives wouldn't be in danger. As soon as the explosion occurred in the sky, Ao Chu had to give up chasing Yang Tian for the time being. He hid under a boulder 100 meters away from Yang Tian and the little blue dragon and looked coldly at where Yang Tian and the little blue dragon were. The lightning falling from the sky was very dense. With Ao Chu's current strength, he couldn't resist this lightning attack. Even the stellar-level elites were the same. Otherwise, the Star Mine Master wouldn't have made this small world public. With his stellar-level realm, he could easily obtain a large number of star crystals. As for those who surpassed stellar level, the Star Mine Master didn't allow them to enter. When the red mist-like spheres exploded in the sky, the lightning falling from the sky didn't last for long. In less than 3 minutes, when the lightning suddenly stopped, Ao Chu rushed out of his hiding place. In a flash, he appeared where Yang Tian was. At this time, Yang Tian was standing calmly with a red sword in his hand. Yang Tian had expected that Ao Chu would block him. He also understood that it was impossible to escape and shake Ao Chu off in such an environment. Then, there was only one battle left. Seeing that Yang Tian was blocked by him, Ao Chu sneered and said, "You won't be able to escape. No one can escape if I, Ao Chu, want to kill them." From Ao Chu's point of view, Yang Tian was dead for sure. Although there were cases in the universe where someone could defeat someone of a higher realm, it was extremely rare. Ao Chu had heard of it but had never encountered it. So your name is Ao Chu. I'll remember you. Yang Tian was very calm as he looked at Ao Chu and smiled. As soon as Yang Tian finished speaking, a weapon that was slightly larger than his palm appeared in Ao Chu's hand. The weapon was curved and dark red in color. There were strange patterns carved on it. Ao Chu didn't hold this strange weapon with his hand. Instead, he held it in his hand. As soon as it appeared, there was a sound of metal rubbing against each other. The two ends suddenly elongated and a bright, curved blade popped out. The overall shape of the weapon turned into a crescent moon. Chapter 253. Seeing Ao Chu take out this kind of weapon, Yang Tian's eyes narrowed slightly. You can die now. When the weapon appeared in his hand, Ao Chu's eyes flashed with cold light and he was about to attack. Wait a moment. At this critical moment, Yang Tian raised his hand and said. Ao Chu was not in a hurry. He looked at Yang Tian with a sneer and said, Before you die, do you have anything to say? Ao Chu has rich battle experience. When fighting, he is like Yang Tian, he doesn't like to talk nonsense with his opponent. However, it is different now because his heart is filled with hatred. The more hatred he has, the more he wants to torture Yang Tian. If he killed Yang Tian, his heart would not be so carefree. He also wants to make Yang Tian realize that Yang Tian is inferior to him. The word jealousy that Yang Tian said before is like a sharp knife stabbing into Ao Chu's sore spot. Yang Tian is right. Ao Chu is jealous of Yang Tian. Why would such a beautiful goddess take a fancy to such a weak person in front of him? In Ao Chu's opinion, Yang Tian can't compare to him. Ao Chu has never been in love, so he naturally doesn't understand how wonderful love is. I want to know where Qin Fei is now. Yang Tian looked at Ao Chu, who was less than 10 meters away from him, and asked again. I can tell you about this. Ao Chu stared at Yang Tian's eyes and said, Qin Fei is now the goddess of Superstar Divine Temple. Her position is like heaven and earth compared to yours. Even if you are a star-level expert, it is impossible to see her at any time. Yang Tian, even if I don't kill you, you can forget about seeing her again. The Superstar Divine Temple will never allow the goddess to marry. Even if I don't kill you, the people in the temple won't let you go. Superstar Divine Temple. Goddess? Hearing this news, Yang Tian was very shocked. Wasn't Qin Fei the princess of Lan Qin Empire? When did she become the goddess of the Superstar Divine Temple? Yang Tian knew a little about the Superstar Divine Palace. It was a powerful force in the universe, and the exiled planet was created by the Superstar Divine Palace to imprison the strong. When he left Earth, the checkpoints he passed through were also set up by the Super Divine Star Temple. Even powerhouses like Grandfather Hong and Gao Yuan were members of the Superstar Divinity Temple. And what kind of existence was the goddess of the Superstar God Temple? What was his position in the temple? Would she be bullied? Yang Tian looked at Ao Chu. For a moment, he had a lot of questions to ask, but he knew that Ao Chu wouldn't answer him. From Ao Chu's eyes, Yang Tian could tell that Ao Chu wasn't lying to him this time. She was telling the truth. Just as Yang Tian's thoughts were in a mess, a gust of wind blew. The arrogance in Yang Tian's eyes suddenly disappeared. Ao Chu definitely didn't leave. Instead, she was going to attack Yang Tian. Ao Chu grasped the timing very well. When Yang Tian was slightly stunned, she made her move. However, Yang Tian's combat experience was also very rich. Even when he was thinking, he wouldn't let his guard down. The moment Ao Chu made a move, she was detected by him. Almost at the same time that Ao Chu's figure disappeared, a rapidly spinning white wheel was already rushing toward Yang Tian. This rapidly spinning wheel was obviously Ao Chu's weapon. It was a long-range weapon. If it was close, it wouldn't be able to unleash its full power. That was why Ao Chu dodged to the distance. Whoosh! When the wheel came, Yang Tian didn't have time to dodge. He raised his blade and slashed at the wheel in front of him. However, this wheel was very slippery. It brushed past Yang Tian's blade and attacked Yang Tian's neck. Condense! At this critical moment, Yang Tian unleashed his spiritual world. Countless little blue dragons formed by his spiritual world rushed out from his spiritual world. These little azure dragons coiled around Ao Chu's rapidly spinning weapon at an extremely fast speed. The specialty of spiritual world was that wherever one's mind was, spiritual world would be able to reach it at the same time, regardless of the distance between them. The spinning force of the weapon was very powerful. With Yang Tian's current spiritual world, he still couldn't stop it. However, Yang Tian's spiritual world still played a key role. The wheel that was originally heading toward his neck changed direction. The wheel stood upright and brushed past Yang Tian's shoulder. Boom! The scales on Yang Tian's shoulder couldn't stop the wheel from cutting through. After the wheel brushed past Yang Tian's shoulder, it crashed into the giant rock behind Yang Tian, shattering the white giant rock into pieces. As the rock fragments flew, Yang Tian quickly dodged. One of the green shadows flashed and flew into the distance. Hiss! The wheel, which was spinning at high speed, turned into a ray of white light and returned after smashing a huge boulder. At a place less than 100 meters away from Yang Tian, Ao Chu raised his hand with a cold smile. The spinning wheel suddenly stopped in his hand. With a click, it stopped moving. But at this moment, a green shadow attacked his face. The speed of the green shadow was comparable to the wheel that he released. Ao Chu was shocked and quickly turned his head. With a whoosh, the sound of wind could be heard next to Ao Chu's ear. In a flash, it brushed past Ao Chu's ear. At the same time, Ao Chu felt a burning pain on the right side of his face. It turned out that a wound had appeared on his face, and blood was seeping out. Although the wound wasn't deep, and it was only a small wound, it was very painful. That was because there was some flame power in the wound. Although it didn't last long, Ao Chu could still feel the burning pain. Ao Chu was enraged. He instantly turned around, and his eyes caught sight of a green shadow. He saw that it was jumping quickly among the rocks. Suddenly, it dived into the pile of rocks. That green shadow was, of course, the little blue dragon. Just now, the smart little blue dragon took the opportunity when Ao Chu was putting away his weapon. It quickly attacked and gave Ao Chu a claw attack. Unfortunately, it only managed to hurt Ao Chu's skin and didn't manage to blind one of Ao Chu's eyes. Boom! The enraged Ao Chu threw the wheel in his hand at the spot where the little blue dragon had just disappeared, and a rain of rocks splashed out. At this time, the little blue dragon had already returned to Yang Tian's side. It lay on a piece of rock at his feet and looked coldly at Ao Chu, who was 100 meters away from them. The little blue dragon, who had turned into a mini dragon, was just as fast. Because it was small, it was even more agile. Xiaolong, good job. Yang Tian gritted his teeth, endured the pain on his left shoulder, and said with a smile. Squeak, squeak. The little blue dragon let out a proud cry. Yang Tian's left shoulder was scratched by Ao Chu's wheel, and a finger-wide wound appeared. It was bleeding non-stop, and blood kept seeping out from between his fingers. To Yang Tian, this was just a small injury. It was too dangerous just now. If it wasn't for his spirit power, Ao Chu's attack just now would have taken his head away. This was a huge lesson. When he was fighting with someone stronger than him, he must not be distracted. This was also because he really wanted to know about Qin Fei's news. When Ao Chu calmed down and put away his weapon again, he was a little surprised when he looked at Yang Tian, who was full of fighting spirit. Just now, he attacked the weak with his strength. When he saw that his weapon was about to cut off Yang Tian's head, he didn't expect his weapon to suddenly change direction. It seemed that Yang Tian's strength was not as weak as he thought. Buzz, 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 as the power of the Dragon Ball continued to pour in, the saber in Yang Tian's hand trembled like a dragon's roar. The aura on Yang Tian's body grew stronger. At the same time, the wound on Yang Tian's shoulder was also healing quickly. At Yang Tian's current level, compared to ordinary humans, he was already a new life form. All of a sudden, Yang Tian's figure flashed and disappeared on the spot. And in Ao Chu's eyes, Yang Tian's figure was constantly flashing, bringing about a series of shadows. He moved forward in a curved path and pounced towards him. Compared to Ao Chu, Yang Tian knew that his level was weaker. Because of this, he launched the first attack. In the blink of an eye, Yang Tian arrived in front of Ao Chu. Holding the saber with both claws, he slashed towards Ao Chu. Hiss, the saber rubbed against the air, letting out an ear-piercing sound. Yang Tian's slash was very powerful and fast. However, this slash still missed. Ao Chu swept past him from the left. Yang Tian was calm. He changed the slash into a sweep. Twisting his waist, he slashed behind him. At this moment, Ao Chu had arrived behind Yang Tian. The crescent weapon in his hand revolved at high speed with his palm as the center, slashing towards the back of Yang Tian's neck. When Yang Tian quickly turned around and swept towards his body, Ao Chu quickly retreated. However, the weapon in his hand was still moving forward, aiming for Yang Tian's face. Yang Tian, who was very wary of Ao Chu's weapon, did not move his feet. Instead, he leaned back and rotated 90 degrees with his feet as the center, dodging the attack. Ao Chu's weapon was very strange. It was so close to Ao Chu. Ao Chu then raised his hand, and the spinning weapon made a circle in the air. Once again, he rushed towards Yang Tian. As for himself, he moved and threw a punch at Yang Tian. Pung! Facing this kind of rapid attack from the front and back, Yang Tian jumped into the air. Holding the saber with both claws, he slashed towards Ao Chu's figure. This time, Yang Tian used his spiritual power. The red wind blade from the saber was enveloped by his spiritual power. Not only was it condensed, but it was also constantly changing its direction. Facing Yang Tian's wind blade, Ao Chu suddenly had a feeling that he could not dodge it. In that instant, as soon as he moved, the wind blade also changed its direction. It was much more agile than his weapon. Spiritual power was just that amazing. As long as he was strong enough, he could instantly reach a very far place with just a thought, ignoring the distance between them. Ao Chu, who was locked onto by Yang Tian's mind, would naturally have this feeling. However, Ao Chu was still stronger than Yang Tian. Even if he could not dodge, he could still take it head-on. Boom! Ao Chu threw a punch at the incoming wind blade. The two powerful forces once again clashed, and there was a loud boom. There was a violent gust of wind, blowing the surrounding rocks into the air. Using the force of the collision, Ao Chu quickly retreated and put away his weapon. Yang Tian also landed on the ground. He waved his saber and faced Ao Chu from the side. That attack just now gave Yang Tian the confidence to defeat Ao Chu. Chapter 254. Whoosh! Suddenly, the sound of wind could be heard. Ao Chu moved and appeared less than 30 meters away from Yang Tian. Ao Chu's speed suddenly increased by quite a bit, which surprised Yang Tian. He could not help but frown. He looked at Yang Tian with a cold smile and said, "Don't think that you can defeat me because I haven't even used my full strength. Now I'll show you the difference between realms." Tch. Before Ao Chu could finish, Yang Tian raised his saber and slashed. With a sharp whistle, another wind blade was released from the saber and rushed toward Ao Chu. This time, Yang Tian used his mental power as well. During the battle, Yang Tian gradually discovered the wonders of mental power. If he could perfectly combine the physical energy released by his body with his illusory mental power, it would produce a magical effect. When Yang Tian released his saber earlier, Ao Chu could not dodge in time. Mental power played a huge role. After realizing the benefits of mental power, Yang Tian wanted to make good use of it to enhance his combat strength. This time, Yang Tian suddenly had an idea. He used his mind to control the wind blade and wanted to make the wind blade attack at the speed of his mind. If he succeeded, the power he released would surpass the speed of light. It would not be a problem for him to defeat someone stronger than Ao Chu. However, the effect of this attack was not ideal. During this process, the wind blade's speed suddenly increased, but his mental power suddenly broke away from the wind blade and reached Ao Chu's body first. At this moment, Yang Tian sensed from the information returned by his mental power that his mental power had already touched Ao Chu's body. At this time, the wind blade he released with his saber had not even traveled half the distance. The two powers had already separated from each other. Solidify. Ao Chu did not seem to notice that Yang Tian's mental power had already touched his body. Faced with Yang Tian's wind blade, he did not dodge. Instead, he suddenly raised his hand and shouted. While his voice was still echoing in the air, Yang Tian's red wind blade suddenly stopped and dissipated in an instant. During this process, Yang Tian sensed that Ao Chu's body was emitting powerful energy wave. This energy formed a protective shield that covered Ao Chu's entire body. The wind blade he released was diluted by Ao Chu's protective shield. Energy. Domain. At this time, Yang Tian could not help but think of the time when he fought Zichen and Ji Wei at the South Pole on Earth. Zichen Ji Wei used the same method in the end. When Ao Chu used it, it was obviously much more powerful than Zichen Ji Wei. Is the use of your own energy so simple? After neutralizing Yang Tian's slash, Ao Chu appeared in front of Yang Tian. He raised his hand and slapped at Yang Tian's chest as he said coldly, "Whoosh!" At the same time, there was an ear-piercing scream. Ao Chu's high-speed spinning wheel made a big circle and attacked Yang Tian's back. It turned out that when Ao Chu made his move, he used his weapon and attacked Yang Tian from the front and back. Whoosh! At the same time, there was a sound of wind. Then there was a boom sound. It turned out that the little blue dragon had helped Yang Tian to push away the rapidly spinning wheel. The little blue dragon's body was also thrown to the side by the force of the wheel. He crashed into a rock and shattered it. At the same time, Ao Chu slapped at Yang Tian's chest. Ao Chu suddenly increased his speed so that Yang Tian could not dodge in time. Boom! Yang Tian was hit by Ao Chu's palm. His body flew backward and crashed into a pile of protruding rocks behind him. Of course, Ao Chu would not let go of this opportunity. Before Yang Tian could get up from the pile of rocks, he appeared above Yang Tian and slapped at him. Whoosh! At this time, a red wind blade was shot out from the pile of rocks. It was ridiculously fast. In Ao Chu's eyes, he had just seen a flash of red when his body was hit by the wind blade. His palm also missed its target. With a boom, it shattered a huge rock next to Yang Tian. The power behind Yang Tian's slash was not very strong, it only caused Ao Chu's body to lose its balance for a short moment in the air. Even so, this slash had saved his life. When he was hit by Ao Chu, his organs were shaken and he was already injured. If he was hit again, he would definitely die. In the rain of rocks, Yang Tian shot out from the pile of rocks. As he spat out a mouthful of blood, he looked around and chose a direction to run. Yang Tian was very fast. Before Ao Chu could react, Yang Tian was already a few hundred meters away from him. You want to run? Ao Chu laughed coldly. After he put away his weapon, his body flashed and he chased after Yang Tian. Yang Tian was already injured. Naturally, his speed was not fast. In the blink of an eye, Ao Chu had closed the distance between them by at least 100 meters. In another 3 seconds, Ao Chu would probably catch up to him. At this time, Yang Tian laughed coldly. The place that Yang Tian had chosen was very spacious. There were almost no huge rocks that he could use to dodge. Since he could not defeat his opponent and could not escape, then he must have the courage to die together with his opponent. Sensing that he was getting closer and closer, Yang Tian suddenly shot up and charged into the sky. At this time, Ao Chu was already diagonally below him. While Yang Tian and Ao Chu were fighting, many red fog-like spheres appeared in the sky again. They pressed down from the sky and had become very dense. They could explode at any time. Tch. Yang Tian held his sword with both his claws and slashed out a powerful wind blade toward the sky. This wind blade was enveloped by Yang Tian's spiritual energy. It was almost unaffected by the strange pressure in the sky. In an instant it hit one of the red fog-like spheres. After this sphere was hit by Yang Tian's sword, it did not explode. However, its falling trajectory was slightly off. With this deviation, it immediately collided with another red fog-like sphere. When Ao Chu saw that Yang Tian had jumped into the air, he was prepared to fly into the air and give Yang Tian a fatal blow. Because he was in the air, Yang Tian's movements could not be compared to when he was on the ground. However, as soon as his feet left the ground, he saw Yang Tian slashing toward the sky. He instantly widened his eyes in shock. Ao Chu did not expect that Yang Tian would want to die together with him. If those red fog-like spheres in the sky were to explode at this time, it would be too terrifying. Ao Chu, who did not want to die together with Yang Tian, immediately landed on the ground and turned to run. However, his reaction was still too slow. Boom! The two fog-like spheres in the sky collided with each other and exploded. In an instant, a powerful red light and countless red lightning bolts were released. When the fog-like spheres exploded, the speed at which they spread through the sky was faster than sound. There were no large rocks around for Ao Chu to dodge. Boom, 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 Yang Tian's body was still in the air when countless lightning bolts fell down like dense raindrops. The speed of the lightning was very fast, far exceeding the speed of sound. Although he personally caused the explosion in the sky, Yang Tian did not want to die like this. The moment the two red fog-like spheres exploded, he quickly used the power of the Dragon Ball in his body to form an invisible energy shield outside his body. At the same time, a large amount of spiritual power also poured out from Yang Tian's spiritual world and was covered by Yang Tian's energy shield formed by the power of the Dragon Ball to prevent the energy of the energy shield from dissipating at an extremely fast speed. Poof! Yang Tian had just finished his preparations to resist the lightning when countless lightning bolts fell from the sky. One of the lightning bolts, which was thicker than an adult's arm, hit Yang Tian's energy shield and made a soft sound. Yang Tian was pleasantly surprised to find that this lightning bolt did not reduce his energy shield by much, only about 1%. However, under this dense lightning, an object the size of a human being would be bombarded by more than 100 bolts of lightning. Moreover, Yang Tian was in the air. Poof, poof, poof. Countless red lightning bolts hit Yang Tian's energy shield almost continuously, making continuous sounds. During this process, Yang Tian tried his best to use the power of the Dragon Ball to replenish the consumption of the energy shield. But the speed of consumption was too fast, and Yang Tian's replenishment speed could not keep up. When Yang Tian's feet landed on the ground, the sound of the energy shield shattering sounded in Yang Tian's ears. It was like a bubble that wrapped Yang Tian, bursting. But at this moment, the red lightning falling from the sky was not over yet. Yang Tian was shocked. Facing the red lightning that was rapidly attacking him, he held his sword with both hands and blocked above his head. This was almost Yang Tian's instinctive resistance. Boom! A red lightning bolt hit Yang Tian's long red sword. At this moment, a powerful force was transmitted down from the sword, through Yang Tian's body, and fell to the ground. With a "ka" sound, the stone under Yang Tian's feet shattered into powder. To Yang Tian's surprise, he actually blocked the lightning attack. The powerful electric current did not pass to his body, making his body split apart like others. The force that Yang Tian received was only the force of the physical impact. In an instant, Yang Tian realized that the saber in his hand, named 15, had played a huge role in this process. Yang Tian suddenly raised his head and looked at the long red sword above his head. At this time, another bolt of lightning fell and hit the sword. Strangely, after this bolt of lightning fell on the sword, it disappeared, and the sword lit up with a red light and trembled slightly. Just like the previous bolt of lightning that hit the sword, Yang Tian only received a physical impact. This kind of physical impact was almost negligible to Yang Tian. With his strong physical body, Yang Tian could resist this kind of energy impact. Dense lightning bolts rained down and continuously struck the blade, while Yang Tian's feet continued to sink into the ground. During this process, the strange thing was that the sword was narrow and could not cover Yang Tian's body, but this long red sword was like a magnet, attracting the lightning around Yang Tian's body. The sword was not wide, but it allowed Yang Tian to be like an umbrella, not being hit by the dense lightning. Chapter 255. Sorry, this chapter is a bit late. While Yang Tian was enduring the concentrated red lightning, Ao Chu was not able to avoid it either. Just like Yang Tian, Ao Chu used his own power to form an energy shield around his body. When the lightning bolts fell, he withstood the concentrated attack. Because he was not surrounded by mental energy, although Ao Chu's energy shield was strong, the energy dissipated very quickly. After withstanding dozens of red lightning bolts, it was about to dissipate. Fortunately, Ao Chu's speed was very fast. At the critical moment, he managed to hide under a huge rock. Hiding under the huge rock, Ao Chu could not help but let out a long breath. This instant encounter made Ao Chu's heart skip a beat. If he had been struck by the red lightning, he did not dare to imagine the consequences. Ao Chu knew more about this small world than Yang Tian. If it had been pure lightning, with Ao Chu's state, he could have completely withstood it. However, the red lightning in this small world had a unique attribute. Once it entered a human's body, it would instantly cause the power in the human body to become crazy and powerful until the body exploded. Even stellar-level powerhouses did not dare to casually withstand this kind of lightning. Hiding under the huge rock, Ao Chu narrowed his eyes and looked in Yang Tian's direction. At this moment, Yang Tian had just raised the sword in his hand. Hundreds and thousands of lightning bolts bombarded Yang Tian's red sword. They were immediately absorbed by the blade, and the blade became brighter and brighter. During this process, not only were the lightning bolts that fell and struck the blade, but even the red lightning bolts within a 10-meter radius around Yang Tian were attracted to him. In Ao Chu's eyes, Yang Tian raised his sword and absorbed countless lightning bolts. It looked as if the sword was releasing countless lightning bolts into the air. This scene made Ao Chu very surprised, even horrified. Buzz, 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 when the lightning stopped and spread into the distance, 15 in Yang Tian's hand was already trembling and emitting a buzzing sound. The lightning that was descending from the sky stopped. Ao Chu's figure flashed and rushed towards Yang Tian. Ao Chu had a premonition that if he did not get rid of Yang Tian now, it would be too late later. Although it was just an intuition, Ao Chu chose to believe it. In countless life and death battles, his intuition had saved him many times. Ao Chu had just moved when a green shadow attacked from the side. Ao Chu knew that this green figure was Yang Tian's pet beast. Ao Chu also raised his guard against the little blue dragon. Previously, the little blue dragon had left a claw mark on his face. When the little blue dragon pounced, Ao Chu casually threw the weapon in her hand towards the little blue dragon. Purring! The rapidly advancing little blue dragon used the dragon horn on its head to knock away the high-speed spinning wheel that Ao Chu had thrown at it. As for itself, it was once again bounced to the side. After landing on the ground, the little blue dragon bounced up again and pounced towards Ao Chu. At this time, Yang Tian gripped 15 tightly in his hand, and he could not help but frown. Because 15 had absorbed enough of the red lightning's energy, it suddenly became unruly. It kept trembling, and Yang Tian's arm was numb from the vibrations. At the same time, the sword became heavier and heavier. Even with Yang Tian's powerful strength, he felt that he could not lift it up anymore. What worried Yang Tian was that he saw Ao Chu pouncing towards him. This really wasn't the right time. At this time, Yang Tian had a faint feeling that if he could tame the sword in his hand, defeating Ao Chu would not be a problem. What should he do? Yang Tian gritted his teeth. With a thought, he channeled a large amount of energy from the Dragon Balls into the sword. When he was on planet Crimson Flame, the sword called 15 had absorbed a large amount of energy from Yang Tian's Dragon Balls. At that time, Yang Tian felt that the sword was like a bottomless pit. At this time, the sword was the same. It was like an extremely evil exotic beast. Yang Tian knew that if he did not feed it, he would not be able to use it. Or perhaps the sword had a mind of its own. If he was not strong enough, it would not be convinced. While Yang Tian was transferring energy to 15, Ao Chu's figure kept flashing. In the blink of an eye, it had arrived in front of him. There was a crazy smile on Ao Chu's face. It seemed that it could not wait any longer as it sent a palm strike towards Yang Tian. When it sent out this palm strike, Ao Chu was still more than 10 meters away from Yang Tian. When the palm strike was sent out, the surrounding air was swept up, making a whoosh sound. Facing Ao Chu's powerful palm strike, Yang Tian used all his strength to raise his sword. Because he was injured earlier, Yang Tian's speed was not as fast as before. It was impossible for him to dodge Ao Chu's attack. He might as well take it head-on. Pring, the force of Ao Chu's palm strike just happened to land on the saber. Yang Tian was sent flying with his sword. His body flew for more than 10 meters in the air before crashing onto the ground. He then quickly slid backward. With a series of crashing sounds, Yang Tian's body plowed out a trench on the gravel on the ground. During this process, Yang Tian felt a burning pain on his back. The clothes on his back were torn apart and many of the scales that grew on his back had fallen off. Yang Tian's body was still sliding on the gravel. Ao Chu's figure flashed and pounced towards Yang Tian from the air. He sent a punch towards Yang Tian's chest. The power of this punch was much stronger and faster than the previous one. There was a loud ping sound. This sound was not from Ao Chu hitting Yang Tian. Instead, it was from Xiao Long. Seeing the little blue dragon's gigantic head coming down and crashing onto the ground, Yang Tian could not help but cry out in shock with his eyes wide open. It turned out that at this critical moment, the transformed little blue dragon had used his own head to block Ao Chu's punch for Yang Tian. The little blue dragon's ability to resist attacks was even stronger than Yang Tian's. When its gigantic head was hit by Ao Chu and crashed onto the ground next to Yang Tian, it did not immediately faint. Instead, it immediately raised its head, opened its mouth, and spat out a dragon's flame at Ao Chu who had landed on the ground. Boom! The scorching dragon's flame rushed towards Ao Chu, but Ao Chu dodged it. After spitting out the dragon's flame, the little blue dragon closed its eyes and its body went limp. Its gigantic head lost its support and once again crashed onto the ground. At this time, the little blue dragon's body had reached a length of more than 10 meters. Even if it was injured and unconscious, its gigantic body still protected Yang Tian who was underneath it. "Get out of the way!" Purring, looking at the gigantic little blue dragon in front of her, Ao Chu shouted angrily and kicked the little blue dragon's body. The little blue dragon's gigantic body was actually sent flying by Ao Chu's kick and fell to the side. At this time, Yang Tian was gritting his teeth and his eyes were wide open. His eyes were bloodshot, and the veins on his forehead were protruding. This was a sign of Yang Tian's extreme anger. Dive! Ao Chu looked at Yang Tian's angry face and shouted coldly. She jumped into the air, spun her body quickly, and once again threw a punch at Yang Tian. This was a method that Ao Chu used to exert her strength in countless battles. This way, she would use the force of her body's rotation to throw a punch, and the power of her punch would be even stronger. This punch was not the fastest punch, but it was the heaviest punch. Ao Chu wanted to kill Yang Tian with one punch. She would not give Yang Tian any chance to resist. If Yang Tian was hit by this punch, he would definitely die. At this time, Yang Tian wanted to let go of his hand that was holding the sword and quickly dodge. The heavy sword would affect his speed, and he could only passively take the beating. Suddenly, a sharp light flashed in Yang Tian's eyes. At this critical moment, he suddenly realized that the sword in his hand had become lighter. This also meant that Yang Tian could use this sword. In an instant, Ao Chu's fist was pointed at Yang Tian, and the powerful force of her fist came crashing down on him. Yang Tian used his mind and shook the body of the sword. A sharp blade of wind suddenly shot out from the sword, and it easily dispersed the force of Ao Chu's fist and hit Ao Chu's chest. Ao Chu, who was hit by the blade of wind, spat out a mouthful of blood and was sent flying. Yang Tian wiped the blood that had splattered on his face and jumped up. With a bang, Ao Chu's body fell to the ground. Ao Chu did not suffer any fatal injuries. After he landed, he immediately got up, covered his chest, and coughed twice. Looking at Yang Tian, who was walking towards him with the sword, Ao Chu's eyes darted around, and then he turned around and ran. At this time, Ao Chu understood that he could no longer defeat Yang Tian, because Yang Tian had a strange sword in his hand. Roar! At this time, the little blue dragon suddenly opened its eyes and let out a low roar. Although the sound was weak, it was filled with anger. Judging from the little blue dragon's roar and the force that it was emitting, although the little blue dragon was injured, it was not fatal. Yang Tian nodded to the little blue dragon, then he turned around and chased after Ao Chu. Ao Chu's injuries were more serious than Yang Tian's. Although he looked fine, only he knew that the sword aura that Yang Tian used just now had the energy of red lightning. As soon as this energy entered his body, it combined with the original power in his body, causing the power to become violent and somewhat uncontrollable. Under such circumstances, Ao Chu's running speed could not be compared to before. The angry Yang Tian gritted his teeth and ignored the injuries in his body. He stared at Ao Chu's constantly flashing figure as he ran, and the distance between them was getting closer and closer. Ao Chu had already noticed that Yang Tian was getting closer and closer to him, but there was no sign of worry on his face. That was because Ao Chu knew that in this small world, there were several passages that could be opened at any time. This was not a secret and many people knew about it. But those who came here would want to stay here as long as possible. Who would have thought that they would leave this place as soon as they arrived? Ao Chu was calculating in his mind. Before Yang Tian caught up to him, he could leave this place through one of the passages and go back to recover from his injuries. As long as he was alive, there would always be a chance to kill Yang Tian. Suddenly, Yang Tian stopped and looked at Ao Chu with a cold smile. Using both of his hands that had turned into dragon claws to hold the sword, Yang Tian slashed toward the sky. Boom! A crescent-shaped wind blade rushed toward the sky. 2 seconds later, boom! There was a loud noise, and countless bolts of lightning once again fell from the sky. Every time those mist-like spheres exploded in the sky, after a very short period of time, those red mist-like spheres would reappear, and the cycle would repeat endlessly. Yang Tian did not want to waste time with Ao Chu like this. Using the lightning from the sky to stop Ao Chu was a good idea. Chapter 256. Countless red lightning bolts descended. The injured Ao Chu had no choice but to hide under a huge rock. He frowned and gritted his teeth as he looked at the dense red lightning bolts outside. The lightning bolts that descended from the sky struck the rocks, making pring-pring-ping sounds. It was as if thousands of spears had chiseled into the rocks. The large rocks were split into pieces and the small rocks were turned into stone chip. This small world had been formed for who knows how many years. The sturdy and huge buildings were all shattered by the lightning bolts that descended from the sky. If this continued for many more years, this small world would probably become a white desert. At that time, when he came here, he would look as if he was in a snowy land. Yang Tian held 15 horizontally above his head and quickly ran towards Ao Chu's location. Scenes of the future appeared in his mind. At that time, the people who came here would probably have to prepare defensive tools that would not conduct electricity and at the same time be very sturdy. Or perhaps he could dig a place to hide underground with 15, this magical blade, attracting the lightning. Yang Tian was not worried about being struck by lightning. In order to prevent any accidents after he slashed out with the blade, he used the power of the Dragon Ball to form a protective shield around his body. CSS. Ao Chu raised both of his hands. In between his hands, rapidly spinning wheels appeared. Under the urging of his power, these two weapons spun at high speed and emitted an ear-piercing screech. At this moment, Ao Chu caught a glimpse of Yang Tian's figure from the corner of his eyes. Ao Chu had already expected Yang Tian's arrival. He was prepared to make a final gamble. Go! When he saw Yang Tian, Ao Chu immediately shouted. The two weapons left his hands and flew towards Yang Tian. At the same time, Ao Chu endured the pain and quickly circulated the energy within his body, forming an energy shield around his body. He flashed out of the white rock he was hiding behind and followed behind the two weapons that were flying in a crisscross pattern, quickly charging towards Yang Tian. During this process, countless lightning bolts landed on his head, but they were all deflected by Ao Chu's energy shield. Seeing Ao Chu rushing towards him, Yang Tian immediately stopped. Boom, boom, metal weapons would attract lightning. Ao Chu's two rapidly spinning wheels were still tens of meters away from Yang Tian. They were struck by two bolts of lightning and fell to the ground, piercing through the rocks. Ao Chu had already expected this situation. Seeing his two weapons destroyed, his expression was still calm. To be able to grow into a stellar-level being, Ao Chu had experienced countless battles. His mental strength was very strong. The more danger he encountered, the calmer he was. He knew that fear would only make him weaker and unable to unleash his full strength. Yang Tian stood on the spot, waiting for Ao Chu's arrival. He knew that this was the last time he would exchange blows with Ao Chu. The result would be either you die or I die. Through the dense lightning, Yang Tian saw Ao Chu's calm expression and sensed that the latter's aura was getting stronger and stronger. During this process, whenever Ao Chu got closer, Yang Tian would feel that Ao Chu had become stronger. It was obvious that Ao Chu had used a secret technique to increase his cultivation in a short period of time. Hum hum hum, Yang Tian moved the sword away from his head. He held it with his right hand and pointed it at the ground, allowing the lightning to land on the energy shield formed by the Dragon Ball's power. He felt the shield's power become weaker and weaker. The red sword in his hand became heavier and heavier after absorbing a lot of red lightning. It kept trembling and making buzzing sounds. The lightning that fell from the sky did not last for long. When Ao Chu was less than 100 meters away from Yang Tian, the red lightning that fell from the sky had already become sparse. Suddenly, Yang Tian raised his sword and slashed twice at Ao Chu. At this moment, Ao Chu was much stronger than when Yang Tian first met him. His running speed was also getting faster and faster like a bolt of lightning. If he just slashed twice, he definitely wouldn't be able to hit Ao Chu. Yang Tian used his mental strength for one of the slashes. The two wind blades formed a cross shape and rushed towards Ao Chu. Yang Tian didn't use his mental strength for the first crescent-shaped wind blade. It was very low to the ground. As it rushed toward Ao Chu, it became longer and longer, covering a wider area. After flying more than 10 meters away from the blade, The edge of the wind blade had already touched the ground. Chi, the sharp wind blade cut the gravel, forming a trench that became wider and deeper. Yang Tian used his mental strength for the second wind blade. For this attack, he used all the mental strength he could use in his spiritual world. This was also the strongest attack Yang Tian had used since the battle with Ao Chu. In an instant, Ao Chu was less than 50 meters away from Yang Tian. Facing the first wind blade, he calmly jumped. His body rolled diagonally in the air and easily dodged it. When his feet landed on the ground, he tapped his toes and jumped again, preparing to dodge the second wind blade. Facing the two red wind blades rushing toward him, Ao Chu had no choice but to dodge. These two wind blades were coming from tricky angles and were too fast. If he wanted to rush toward Yang Tian and kill Yang Tian before Yang Tian's third slash arrived, he had no choice but to face them directly and dodge them. Chi, when Ao Chu was dodging the first slash, Yang Tian lightly shouted. Almost at the same time, Yang Tian's second wind blade suddenly sped up. Its speed was at least twice as fast as before. Yang Tian had tried this method before, but it failed. This was because his mind was much faster than the wind blade. However, this time was different. Yang Tian didn't have such high expectations. At the same time, he used the strongest mental strength he could. In the end, when Ao Chu was preparing to dodge the second wind blade, the red wind blade that was at least a few meters away from him suddenly touched his body. Ao Chu didn't even have time to react. Pring, this powerful attack directly broke through the invisible defense outside Ao Chu's body and hit his body. Ao Chu spat out blood and his body was once again sent flying. Chi huff when he saw that Ao Chu was injured by the second wind blade. Yang Tian's hand loosened. The heavy sword stabbed into the ground, and he let out a breath of foul air. Cough, cough. Ao Chu, who was lying on the gravel, felt powerless. He kept on coughing and blood bubbles kept coming out from the corner of his mouth. This attack injured Ao Chu even more severely than before. He couldn't even move, let alone resist. Yang Tian dragged the heavy sword and walked toward Ao Chu. At the same time, he poured the power of the Dragon Ball into the sword. Ao Chu wasn't dead yet. Yang Tian didn't let his guard down. He was ready to give him another slash to kill Ao Chu. Stop! When Yang Tian was about 10 meters away from Ao Chu and was about to raise his sword, there came a shout from the side that didn't allow any disobedience. Ha ha ha! When he heard the familiar voice, Ao Chu, who was lying on the ground, opened his mouth and laughed. He knew that he didn't have to die because the star mine owner had arrived. Chapter 257. The star mine master would definitely help him. Ao Chu already knew this when he had come to the Lugu planet, as he knew that the star mine master hated the super starry hall. Ao Chu had expected this. However, he hadn't expected that Yang Tian, who had come out of the exiled planet, would be so difficult to deal with. If he had known this would happen, he would have attacked Yang Tian with all his might or even launched a sneak attack. If he had dealt with Yang Tian as soon as he had made his move, none of this would have happened. Ao Chu regretted it very much. However, he was also very happy, as he had once again experienced the feeling of surviving a calamity. Ao Chu hadn't experienced this feeling in a very long time. Cough, cough. Ao Chu, whose entire body was in unbearable pain and powerless, stopped laughing abruptly. Then, he coughed again and spat out a large amount of bloody foam. Yang Tian snorted coldly when he saw Ao Chu's miserable state. He turned around and looked at the person who had stopped him from killing Ao Chu. It was a tall middle-aged man in black robes. He had a square face, thick eyebrows and big eyes. His body exuded a powerful aura. Yang Tian frowned when he sensed the middle-aged man's aura. He knew that even if he advanced 2 more levels, he wouldn't be a match for this middle-aged man. This man's strength made him feel powerless. Yang Tian had been lucky to be able to defeat Ao Chu. If it hadn't been for the miraculous effects of the 15th blade in his hand, he would have been struck to death by the red lightning. He hadn't been able to injure Ao Chu even though he had used a suicidal attack. The Star Mine Master walked slowly towards Yang Tian, who was dozens of meters away. As the Star Mine Master walked, Yang Tian felt as if a mountain was slowly pressing down on him. An intense feeling of suffocation filled his chest. "I am the Star Mine Master. You can't kill anyone on my territory," the Star Mine Master said faintly as he walked towards Yang Tian. The Star Mine Master's tone was filled with an inviolable will. So he is the Star Mine Master, Yang Tian thought to himself. However, no. Faced with the Star Mine owner who announced his name, Yang Tian clenched his teeth and shook his head. "I want to kill him. Why didn't you do anything when he was killing me?" At that moment, Yang Tian was not afraid at all. He was simply too furious. The little blue dragon had never suffered such a serious injury before, and it was to save him. Yang Tian would never allow Ao Chu to live after injuring the little blue dragon. In the face of Yang Tian's doubts and unwillingness, the Star Quarry's owner said indifferently, "If I say no, it means no." Yang Tian narrowed his eyes. Suddenly, he jumped up and slashed at the owner of Star Mine with his saber in both hands. A sharp saber chi shot out from the saber in Yang Tian's hand. In the face of Yang Tian's attack, the Star Quarry's owner continued to walk slowly towards Yang Tian, as if he did not care at all. However, Yang Tian's attack was not aimed at the Star Quarry's owner. It was aimed at Ao Chu, who was not far away. Even if there were elites stopping him, Yang Tian would kill Ao Chu. If it were others, they might think that Yang Tian was stupid and did not know when to advance or retreat. Was he stupid? Yang Tian did not care at all. If he did not kill Ao Chu now, he would never be at ease in the future. Yang Tian's path of cultivation was to follow his will. The Star Quarry's owner did not expect Yang Tian's wind blade. He thought that Yang Tian was so angry that he had lost his mind and fought back. He did not expect that Yang Tian's red wind blade would only be released when Yang Tian's saber slashed down. It then rushed towards Ao Chu. Pfft! Ao Chu, who was laughing coldly, felt that his body was suddenly hit. Then, his vision turned black and he did not know what happened. Yang Tian's attack had directly blasted Ao Chu's body into pieces. You have a death wish." Seeing that Yang Tian dared to go against his will and kill Ao Chu in such a deceitful way, the Star Quarry's owner was enraged. A thick, murderous aura emanated from his body. As soon as the Star Quarry's murderous aura was released, Yang Tian knew that he was about to attack. Rather than being killed passively, he might as well take the initiative to attack. Hiss! Yang Tian jumped up again. Holding the saber with both hands, he slashed at the Star Quarry's owner. This was Yang Tian's best attack. He was already injured and he had used up a lot of energy. His body felt sore and weak. Seeing Yang Tian jump up and the red wind blade coming at him, the Star Quarry's owner raised his left hand and casually grabbed. He crushed the wind blade that Yang Tian had slashed out. Then, he clenched his right hand into a fist and punched at Yang Tian. The Star Quarry's owner's movements were as smooth as flowing water. They were very smooth and filled with a sense of beauty. Purring! The Star Quarry's owner's fist hit Yang Tian's chest. This powerful attack directly shattered Yang Tian's sternum. The remaining force did not dissipate. It carried Yang Tian's body directly into the sky. Yang Tian's chest was in great pain. Blood spurted out from his nose and mouth. The Star Quarry's owner below and the surrounding situation became more and more blurry in his eyes. At this time, Yang Tian also used his strong will to try not to faint. He held the red saber in his hand tightly. Soon, Yang Tian's vision became darker and darker. His consciousness became more and more blurry. Other than the pain in his chest, there was only the sound of the wind in his ears. Yang Tian's body flew diagonally into the sky. When he was on Earth, people often joked that they wanted to send people flying. And now Yang Tian was sent flying by the Star Quarry's owner. The power of this attack was so strong that Yang Tian directly jumped over the pressure layer hundreds of meters in the air and flew higher into the sky. Perhaps Yang Tian's signs of life were too weak, so he was not imprisoned by the strange pressure in the air. Roar! Whoosh! Boom! The injured little blue dragon suddenly arrived at this time. When it saw Yang Tian flying into the sky, it let out an angry roar and shot a bolt of lightning at the Star Quarry's owner. This bolt of lightning was so fast that it hit the Star Quarry's owner. However, the Star Quarry's owner did not move. He looked at the little blue dragon with great interest and smiled. "From now on, you will be my pet beast." After the Star Quarry's owner finished speaking, he stretched out his hand toward the little blue dragon in the sky. A powerful binding force came from the Star Quarry's hand and imprisoned the little blue dragon's body. Roar! The little blue dragon let out a low howl and turned its head. As it struggled, it looked at Yang Tian in the sky, who was getting farther and farther away from it. The little blue dragon could clearly feel that Yang Tian's life force was rapidly weakening. Its cry was full of sadness. "What a loyal pet beast! Don't worry. After you follow me, I will treat you as well as he does." The Star Quarry's owner did not hide his love for the little blue dragon and said with a smile. As soon as he finished speaking, the little blue dragon's body unexpectedly changed. From the little blue dragon's body, a blue flame suddenly emerged. The binding energy of the Star Quarry's owner suddenly disintegrated. The burning little blue dragon turned its head and chased after Yang Tian. The Star Quarry's owner frowned as he watched the little blue dragon rush through the pressure barrier in the sky and head toward the largest red fog sphere in the sky. Chapter 258. In this small world, there was a huge red mist-like sphere floating. It was as huge as a planet. When the little blue dragon rushed through the pressure area, such a sphere appeared in its eyes. Countless small mist-like spheres were produced by it. Unlike the small red mist-like spheres, this huge red sphere did not have lightning on it, but its color was darker, the same as dark red blood. Pooh! 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 Dull and dense sounds continuously entered the little blue dragon's ears. Each sound represented the birth of a small red sphere. They were spat out by the huge red sphere, flickering with red lightning as they fell downward. This huge sphere actually had a powerful gravitational force. The closer one got, the stronger the gravitational force. After Yang Tian's body rushed through the pressure area, he was attracted over. His speed became faster and faster, and he soon entered the huge red sphere. When the little blue dragon saw this situation, its eyes widened and it accelerated its flying speed again. It could not leave Yang Tian alone. When the little blue dragon passed through the dense, small red spheres and was about to approach the huge red sphere, it turned its head reluctantly and looked down. At such a height, the situation below could be seen at a glance. It turned out that the place where they were just now was an oval-shaped land floating in space. Looking down from above, one could clearly see that there were many huge buildings on it. The traces left after the collapse could be seen, and the humans were only small black dots. One could imagine that a long time ago, the floating land below was full of magnificent buildings. It was a group of palaces floating in the universe. The little blue dragon only turned its head to take a look before resolutely turning its head and chasing after Yang Tian into the huge red sphere. What a stupid beast! On the ground, the star mine owner shook his head helplessly when he saw this situation. He really liked the little blue dragon, because after the little blue dragon transformed into a huge dragon, it looked very domineering. If he traveled in the future with a mount like the little blue dragon, it would definitely look cool and domineering. After sighing, the Star Quarry's figure flashed and disappeared. Soon, he had left the small world. The huge red fog-like sphere was like an independent world. As soon as the little azure dragon entered it, its eyes were filled with blood-red light. Among them, there were countless intertwined tubular objects of varying thickness that looked like blood vessels. They were filled with sarcoma-like things that were expanding and contracting. They were beating like a human heart, making pu-pu sounds. This wasn't a safe place. While the little blue dragon was swimming and shuttling through these tubular objects, a thick and solid fleshy tentacle suddenly wrapped around the little blue dragon and wrapped around its body. Zzz. The sound of burning could be heard immediately. The tentacles wrapped around the little blue dragon were burned by the green flame emitted from the little blue dragon's body. They sizzled and shrank back immediately. However, even more tentacles appeared and swept towards the little blue dragon. Boom! The angry little blue dragon opened its mouth and spat out a dragon flame at the large group of fleshy tentacles. As soon as these fleshy tentacles encountered the high-temperature dragon flame, they shrank back. However, those that weren't burned still swept towards the little blue dragon. There were too many of these fleshy tentacles. Seeing that it couldn't deal with them, Little Blue's body immediately shrank. Under such circumstances, its huge body was at a disadvantage because it was too big a target. During this process, the little blue dragon discovered that those thick, fleshy tentacles were all born from huge sarcomas. When they weren't attacking, they were like insects, swimming in the air like snake. The little blue dragon, who had turned into a mini-dragon, became a much smaller target, and this spherical world in its eyes had also become much bigger. In the little blue dragon's senses, this huge sphere was like a living creature. Where was Yang Tian? This was the question that the little blue dragon was most concerned about. The little blue dragon, who had shrunk, was a much smaller target for this red sphere. Other than the small, fleshy tentacles near its body, those thick fleshy tentacles no longer attacked it. The little blue dragon quickly shuttled through countless intertwined red tubular bodies and countless fleshy tentacles, hoping to find Yang Tian. It knew that Yang Tian, who couldn't move, must have been swept away by the fleshy tentacles. Zizz! As the little blue dragon shuttled through, suddenly, a burst of zizz sounded. The entire red sphere began to flash with red electric current. Being hit by this electric current, the little blue dragon let out a painful squeak. The little blue dragon was already injured, and using the green dragon flames consumed a lot of energy. Being entangled by this electric current was like being pricked by needles all over its body. The painful little blue dragon shuttled through the red sphere randomly. It didn't know how long this electric current would last. It only hoped to find Yang Tian as soon as possible. Even if Yang Tian was already dead, it still wanted to bring Yang Tian's body back. At this time, not only was the little blue dragon's body in pain, its heart was even more uncomfortable. What the little blue dragon didn't know was that the current Yang Tian had already been swept into a sarcoma by the fleshy tentacles. His entire body was wrapped in red liquid, and starting from his skin, it melted little by little. This huge red sphere was actually a mysterious creature in the universe. It was controlled by someone using a special method to float here, and to the person controlling it, it had a certain effect. At this time, Yang Tian wasn't dead yet. He still had a vague consciousness and could still feel the pain in his body. However, he couldn't move. He couldn't even move a finger or blink his eyes. The red mucus began to disintegrate Yang Tian's body. If he was dug out from the sarcoma at this time, it would be as if his entire body had just been burned by fire. There would be no skin on his body, and it would be bloody. As his body disappeared, Yang Tian's consciousness became more and more blurred. It was as if a big pot lid was covering his head, pressing him down and sinking into the dark abyss. Soon, a light appeared in Yang Tian's eyes. In the light, Qin Fei was wearing a wedding dress, looking at him with a smile. Yang Tian's parents were also standing behind Qin Fei, looking at him calmly. Yang Tian smiled and walked towards them. Hey, at this time, a black-robed masked man appeared behind Yang Tian and shouted at Yang Tian. Yang Tian turned around and looked curiously at the black-robed masked man who had suddenly appeared. "Do you want to die?" the black-robed masked man asked as he looked at Yang Tian. There was some dissatisfaction in his tone. "I'm so tired," Yang Tian replied. Yes, Yang Tian was indeed very tired at this time. The surrounding darkness was pressing down on him to the point that he couldn't breathe. At the same time, there was a very heavy feeling of powerlessness. However, the black-robed masked man said, "Tired, my ass? How far have you walked on the path of the strong, and you're already tired? Why don't you see who they are?" As the black-robed masked man spoke, he raised his hand and pointed at Qin Fei and Yang Tian's parents, who were in the light. Let me explain here. The near-death experience above, such as a big pot lid covering your head and sinking into the dark abyss. This description was given by my grandmother, who passed away some time ago. A few days before my grandmother passed away, her heart stopped beating once. After she woke up, she called my mother and told her. Chapter 259. The moment the black-robed man raised his hand, half of the heads of Qin Fei and Yang Tian's parents suddenly turned into skeletons. They looked at Yang Tian with sinister smiles. Seeing his family members become like this, Yang Tian cried out in surprise. At this moment, Yang Tian's mind finally cleared up a little. Once his mind cleared, Qin Fei and Yang Tian's parents disappeared from the light. The black-robed man turned around and looked at Yang Tian, then said indifferently, "This is just your imagination. This old man will show you these." As soon as his voice fell, the black-robed man raised his hand and pointed forward. With this point of his finger, the dark space in front of him suddenly lit up, and various images appeared. In the images, scenes from ancient times appeared. The location seemed to be on Earth. In the images, the environment looked very harsh. There were volcanoes everywhere, and there were also very ferocious-looking exotic beasts. Among the exotic beasts, there was the giant Tyrannosaurus that Yang Tian had once killed on Crimson Flame Planet, as well as the ferocious black python, and the pterosaur that was spitting flames. A large number of exotic beasts of all kinds were killing each other in the forests, grasslands, and lakes. The scene was very brutal and bloody. The images flashed past one by one, and suddenly a human appeared. The human in the images was tall and had long hair draped over his shoulders. There was only a circle of animal skin around his waist, and he was holding a huge axe. In front of him, countless ferocious exotic beasts were pouncing towards him in groups. They were so densely packed that there was no end to them. In the sky, countless flying beasts formed a dark cloud that covered the sky, crushing towards the man holding the huge axe. With so many exotic beasts, Yang Tian would be terrified if he were to face them alone. However, the tall man's expression was calm. Suddenly, he held the axe with both hands and swung it at the countless beasts that were pouncing towards him. Boom! There was no sound in the images, but Yang Tian could imagine how powerful that axe was. How earth-shattering. As the axe swung down, countless deep valleys began to form under the strong man's feet. The earth cracked and turned. The beasts in front of him, no matter how strong they were, fell into the deep valleys with the earth and were then buried. All that was left were the exotic beasts in the sky. The burly man suddenly soared into the sky, arriving at a place even higher than the horde of beasts, and slammed his palm down. This palm strike was many times stronger than Ao Chu's. All the flying exotic beasts within a radius of several dozen kilometers were slammed to the ground by the invisible palm force. 100-meter-deep palm print appeared on the cracked ground, and all the exotic beasts under the palm were smashed into minced meat. The remaining exotic beasts that weren't hit, whether they were on the ground or flying in the sky, were fleeing in all directions in a panic. After killing and slapping countless exotic beasts to death, the image changed. It was the same man again. He carried a huge axe and walked through the mountain range. When he came across a tall mountain peak, he would cleave it with his axe. When he came across a deep valley, he would slap the soil and rocks from high up into the valley, filling it up. When he came across a river, he would slash it with his axe. As he continued to slash, human settlements were formed one after another. After this image ended, another scene shocked Yang Tian. In the blue sky, 9 huge meteors were falling towards the ground. These 9 huge meteors were burning, emitting a scorching light. They were still far from the ground, but the temperature on the ground had already risen by many times. The wooden houses built by humans on the ground were instantly set ablaze, and the crops in the fields withered at an extremely fast speed. The river water emitted a white mist, as if it was about to boil. A man with a bow on his back faced the 9 huge meteors falling from the sky. He immediately took out his bow and shot 9 arrows into the sky in one breath. After the 9 arrows flew into the sky, they transformed into 9 bright white energy pillars that rushed into the sky. The light from the pillars covered the light from the 9 meteors. The 9 energy pillars struck the 9 meteors, smashing the 9 burning meteors into pieces and turning them into a rain of fire that fell down. Such scenes appeared one after another, causing Yang Tian to widen his eyes in shock. He was so shocked that he couldn't close his mouth. The humans inside were really too powerful. They all had the ability to move mountains and fill the sea. The man carrying the huge axe reminded Yang Tian of Pengu. And the man who shot the 9 arrows was definitely the legendary Ho-E. When the black-robed man withdrew his hand, the image disappeared and returned to darkness. After seeing this, do you know what I want to say to you? Looking at Yang Tian, who was in a daze due to shock, the black-robed masked man asked. Only then did Yang Tian wake up. He thought for a while and said, "These people are the first batch of powerhouses that were exiled to Earth by the Superstar Divinity Temple, right?" The black-robed masked man smiled and nodded. "You guessed right. However, this is not the main point I want to talk about." Yang Tian shook his head. He didn't understand what the black-robed masked man meant. The black-robed masked man looked at Yang Tian and said to Yang Tian in a very serious tone, "You are the descendants of these powerhouses, the descendants of Yen Huang. The blood of these powerhouses flows in your body. Think about it carefully. If you can't even understand this, you deserve to die." After the black-robed masked man finished speaking, he suddenly disappeared. "I am the descendant of powerhouses. I have the bloodline of powerhouses." After the black-robed masked man disappeared, Yang Tian lowered his head and muttered to himself. For a moment, he still couldn't understand what the black-robed masked man wanted him to understand. Could it be that the descendants of powerhouses will definitely be powerful? There were shrewd founding emperors, muddle-headed emperors, tiger fathers and dog sons. Although he had watched the scenes that made one's blood boil, Yang Tian's heart was still very tired. He suddenly raised his head and looked at the source of light from before. Miraculously, Qin Fei and his parents appeared again. This time, the 3 of them weren't as terrifying as before. Their expressions were so amiable. In addition to these 3 people, there were also some vague figures behind them. One of them seemed to be his grandfather. There were also some good friends from Earth, such as Zhou Hao, Su Fei. Seeing these people, Yang Tian missed home and felt more and more tired. After having this kind of emotion, Yang Tian's consciousness became more and more blurry, as if he was about to fall asleep. "No!" At the critical moment, Yang Tian suddenly shouted and clenched his fists. At this moment, he finally understood. It turned out that what the black-robed masked man wanted him to think about was not how powerful those powerhouses were, nor was it about the power of their bloodline, but their spirit of resistance. When those powerhouses were sent to Earth, they had to face countless exotic beasts, harsh environments, and purposely created disasters. These powerhouses had great strength, but they also faced life-threatening difficulties. "Really? Can't you just tell me directly? Why are you being so mysterious?" Yang Tian muttered after thinking clearly. He finally understood that at this time, he couldn't give up. Even if there was a little flame of life burning, he had to continue living. Those powerhouses were resisting the harsh environment, and now he, Yang Tian, had to resist the threat of death. Soon, Yang Tian understood the real reason for the black-robed masked man's appearance. Chapter 260. When Yang Tian pulled himself together, his consciousness became more and more clear. However, his body was seriously injured and was being corroded by the red liquid. His consciousness was unable to control his body. The dark force that suppressed his consciousness seemed to be getting stronger and stronger. This formless power of darkness was death. Even if Yang Tian pulled himself together, if this continued, only death would await him. Just like a wick without oil, it was impossible to continue burning. You finally thought it through. Just when Yang Tian didn't know what to do, the black-robed masked man appeared again and said lightly. Yang Tian turned around and looked at the black-robed masked man in front of him. Suddenly there was hope. He knew that this person would definitely help him. When he was on Earth, Yang Tian had seen his strength. The black-robed masked man looked at Yang Tian with an expectant expression and said, "The hope of living is the most important. If I don't let you comprehend it yourself, it's useless no matter how much I say. In this regard, I can't force you to help, I can only guide you." Yang Tian nodded. Although he didn't fully understand the black-robed masked man's words, he understood some of the truth. If a person wanted to die, even the strongest person in the universe wouldn't be able to stop it. No wonder some people said that when a person was alive, other than having the freedom to die at any time, they didn't have 100% control over everything else. Thinking of how tired he felt before and how he wanted to give up everything, Yang Tian couldn't help but blush with shame. However, he couldn't be blamed because he didn't know that giving up was equivalent to death. At that time, his consciousness was in a state of confusion. This old man said before that the descendants of the ancient powerhouses have the bloodline power of the powerhouses. As long as a part of it is activated, it will allow you to live. After the black-robed masked man finished speaking, Yang Tian couldn't help but become excited. Turned out that the humans on Earth were born with powerful innate strength. Just like some scientists said, the human genes contained the memories of the previous generation. As long as it could be developed, everyone would be superhuman. Then how can I activate this power? Yang Tian asked expectantly. Wake up. The black-robed masked man laughed. He pointed his finger at Yang Tian's forehead and said these two words. Boom. When the black-robed masked man's finger landed on Yang Tian's forehead, the dark space surrounding Yang Tian suddenly collapsed with a loud bang. At the same time, Yang Tian felt a wave of warmth in his heart. At the same time, he felt a stabbing pain on the surface of his body. In an instant, his vision darkened and a moment later, he felt a hazy red light in his eyes. Yang Tian finally woke up from his corporeal body. Because his eyes were closed, the light outside passed through his eyelids, giving him a red feeling. Although he had woken up, he still couldn't move. What had just happened felt like a dream to Yang Tian. He didn't know if it was real or not. Or was it an illusion caused by the instinctive resistance of the consciousness against death? Yang Tian had never seen a person enter the depths of another person's consciousness. Everyone would dream like this. When they were dreaming, the situation in the dream seemed to be real. However, once they woke up, they would feel that the situation in the dream was unreal and hazy. As his consciousness became clearer, Yang Tian's perception of his body became clearer. At this moment, in addition to the damage to his internal organs and serious injuries, the surface of Yang Tian's body was also slowly being corroded by the red liquid. It was very painful. His nerves were stimulated by this pain. Yang Tian gritted his teeth and tried his best to move. First, he used the power of the Dragon Ball in his body to circulate it. Yang Tian's sternum was shattered by the star mine owner's punch, and his heart stopped beating. Fortunately, his powerful body still maintained a certain amount of vitality. Under the nourishment of the power of the Dragon Ball, Yang Tian could clearly feel that the organs in his body were slowly recovering. However, the damage to the surface of his body was getting worse and worse. The red liquid had completely corroded the skin on the surface of his body, and the muscles under the skin were also being destroyed. The repair speed of the power of the Dragon Ball was far from being comparable to the speed of destruction. But at this moment, a scorching energy suddenly gushed out from every part of his body. Yang Tian felt that this power originated from the inside of his body, as if it was an innate power. As soon as it appeared, the cells in his body began to divide rapidly, repairing his damaged body. This was much faster than the repair speed of the power of the Dragon Ball. Soon, blood vessels and skin grew on the surface of his body. This was a very mysterious process. Although it was very painful and itchy, Yang Tian was able to comprehend some things from it. Yang Tian knew that this was the power that originated from his bloodline. At this time, Yang Tian no longer felt that it was a dream. How did that powerhouse come into my consciousness? Who is he in the process of recovery? Yang Tian kept thinking, which also diverted his attention and reduced the pain. A few minutes later, when his body was almost recovered, Yang Tian finally had strength. His recovered right hand felt the familiar hilt of the saber. It turned out that after Yang Tian was injured and unconscious, he was also tightly holding onto the saber in his hand. After entering the huge red sphere, both he and his saber were sucked into a very large sarcoma. Yang Tian held the saber and slashed with force. The sarcoma, wrapped around Yang Tian, was cut open by his saber, and Yang Tian immediately jumped out from inside. After waking up, Yang Tian knew that he was surrounded in a container, and his whole body was soaked in an extremely corrosive liquid. After realizing his environment, Yang Tian did not open his eyes, nor did he breathe. If he opened his eyes, his eyeballs would be corroded, and if he breathed, the corrosive liquid would enter his lungs, making him feel even more uncomfortable. It had to be said that Yang Tian woke up in time. If he woke up a little later, his body would be too seriously injured, and his flame of life would be extinguished, and even the gods would not be able to save him. As soon as he came out of the sarcoma, Yang Tian floated in the air. Perhaps because there was no liquid left in the sarcoma on his body, those swaying fleshy tentacles did not attack him. When the red liquid on the surface of his body dried and lost its corrosiveness, Yang Tian opened his eyes. What entered his eyes was a red world. In front of his eyes were red tubular objects that were crossed together, and they were covered with dense lumps that looked like sarcomas. On these sarcomas, there were many fleshy tentacles that were constantly swaying in the air. Yang Tian looked and knew that he had entered the interior of a living body. Squeak! At this moment, the little blue dragon's cry rang out. In a flash, the green shadow came to Yang Tian's side. It turned out that Yang Tian was not far from the little blue dragon. After the little blue dragon dodged the dense red lightning, it heard the sound of Yang Tian coming out and immediately rushed over. Seeing that the little blue dragon was fine, Yang Tian was very happy. Chapter 261. The little blue dragon, who had returned to Yang Tian's side, was happy for a moment before it became dispirited. It was injured and had consumed a lot of energy. It was lucky that it did not get sucked into the disgusting sarcoma like Yang Tian. The storage bracelet on Yang Tian's left wrist was made of an unknown material. It was not damaged at all in the red corrosive liquid. Instead, it became brighter. As for Yang Tian's clothes, the upper half of his body was gone. Even his wear-resistant jeans had become underwear. He immediately took them off and took out his backpack from his storage bracelet. He then took out a towel and a bottle of water from the backpack. After wetting the towel with water, Yang Tian wiped his body. His hair was also corroded. After his scalp grew back, he had a head of short hair. Although it was just a simple wipe, Yang Tian felt much more comfortable than before. After throwing away the towel, Yang Tian immediately put on his clothes. The process of Yang Tian changing his clothes was very fast. It did not even take 5 seconds. This was because he knew that after the smell of the corrosive liquid disappeared from his body, he would most likely be attacked by the flesh tentacles. As expected, when the little blue dragon jumped onto Yang Tian's shoulder, the thick flesh tentacles around him quickly wrapped around him. Puff puff puff, Yang Tian did not have time to study the new energy that appeared in his body. He grabbed 15, who was floating beside him, and quickly waved it a few times to cut off the flesh tentacles that were coming towards him. The part of the flesh tentacles that were cut off and separated from the sarcoma floated in the air and withered at an extremely fast speed. The part that was connected to the sarcoma that was cut off quickly healed and began to grow again. After cutting off the first wave of flesh tentacles, Yang Tian did not stop immediately. He held the knife and flicked it on the red tubular tissue closest to him, shooting towards the gap. Constantly shuttling between the red tubular tissues, Yang Tian felt like he was shuttling through a jungle. However, this place was much more dangerous than the jungle on the planet. Because his injuries were not completely healed and his body was still recovering, Yang Tian's speed was not very fast. Zzz, Yang Tian was ejecting between the dense tubular structures. Suddenly, the entire space was filled with dense red electric threads. The nature of these electric currents was similar to the red electric currents outside. When they landed on the body, not only would the body feel intense pain, the energy contained in them would also drill into the body, causing the energy in the body to go out of control. This strange property caused those who were struck by this electric current, regardless of whether they were weak or strong, to suffer the same damage. A weak person's body was weak and couldn't withstand this kind of electric current. However, a strong person's strength was much stronger. If his strength went out of control, the consequences would be even more severe. The little blue dragon lying on Yang Tian's shoulder couldn't help but squeak as it was electrocuted. Yang Tian, who was enveloped by countless red electric currents, couldn't help but become anxious. He knew that the little blue dragon couldn't withstand such damage, so he immediately used the power of the Dragon Balls in his body to defend against this electric current. Of course, he didn't forget to use his mental power during this process. The advantage of this was that the power of the Dragon Balls wrapped in mental power was very condensed and wouldn't dissipate quickly. Even Ao Chu, whose realm was higher than Yang Tian's, couldn't withstand this situation longer than Yang Tian because he didn't cultivate mental power. Fortunately, this kind of electric current didn't last long. When Yang Tian felt that he couldn't bear it anymore, it finally stopped. Yang Tian couldn't help but sigh in relief. If this electric current continued, he wouldn't know what to do. Although the red saber in his hand could attract the red electric threads, the red electric threads in this space were too small and too dense. It couldn't have the same effect as it did on the ground. During the period when the red electric current appeared, Yang Tian didn't stay in the same place. He continued to pass through the countless tubular structures. If this sphere was the root of a big tree, then Yang Tian was like a small ant. Here, Yang Tian had lost his direction. Even if he had an advanced instrument to guide the way, it would be useless here. This was because the mysterious giant red sphere still had gravity on the outside, but inside it was no different from being in space. It was in a state of weightlessness, causing one to lose one's sense of direction. Moreover, it would be useless to leave a mark here. If one used a saber to make a cut on the tubular structures, the wound would heal quickly without leaving any trace. The only way was to move forward based on his feelings and try to go in a straight line. If he was lucky, he would head outside. If not, he would enter the center of the red sphere. It might be more dangerous inside. Yang Tian was very close to the outer shell of the red sphere when he woke up earlier. If he knew the direction, he could rush out of the red sphere in a few minutes. Now, Yang Tian was moving deeper into the sphere. He couldn't tell the direction here, so he naturally didn't know. The red sphere was very big, and the red electric current would appear once every 10 to 15 minutes. In the beginning, Yang Tian didn't know the pattern and just dealt with it. But after a few times, he was able to handle it with ease. Understanding the pattern saved him a lot of energy. As he moved forward quickly, Yang Tian slowly realized that he was moving towards the deepest part of the sphere. Because the red electric current was getting stronger, the frequency of its appearance was also increasing. In the end, the dense red electric threads continued to appear. This situation made Yang Tian faintly feel that he was getting closer and closer to the center of the red sphere. What was in the center? This was what Yang Tian was most curious about. There were also many questions that appeared in his mind at the same time. For example, what was this giant red sphere? Where did the large amount of stellar crystals come from? Although Yang Tian didn't see the giant red sphere and the process of producing those small spheres, he knew that it must be related to this giant red sphere. After those small red spheres exploded, they would produce a lot of stellar crystals. Then, what about this giant red sphere? But Yang Tian also knew that with his current situation, it wasn't suitable for him to explore inside. It was better to leave this place. In the dense red electric current, the energy in his body was being consumed more and more. Yang Tian had no choice but to give up and prepare to leave. But suddenly, a strong attractive force came from in front of him. Countless red electric current, like silk, gathered in front of him. Yang Tian and Little Azure Dragon, who were inside, were naturally swept in as well. This force came too suddenly, and Yang Tian wasn't prepared at all. Just like when he was on the ground, being struck by countless red lightning bolts, Yang Tian waved 15 in his hand. The red electric current, which was getting denser and denser, gathered in large amounts towards 15's red blade, reducing the pressure on Yang Tian. This powerful and mysterious attractive force could even attract the red lightning. Yang Tian naturally couldn't resist it. His body kept spinning in the air, flying in the direction of the attractive force. In this process, Yang Tian found that the surrounding tubular tissues were getting fewer and fewer. After a few minutes, the dense red lightning suddenly disappeared, and Yang Tian and the little blue dragon had been brought to an empty, dark red space. In the middle of this spacious space, a huge rectangular palace quietly floated. Seeing this huge palace, Yang Tian couldn't help but open his eyes wide, his face full of surprise. He didn't expect that there would be a human building in this huge sphere. Chapter 262. If he didn't have the 15th in his hand. Yang Tian thought that it would be really difficult to enter this place. Even a stellar-level powerhouse would find it very difficult to enter this place. Not to mention the strong pressure layer above the ground, even if he passed through it, no one would think of entering this huge red ball. One had to know that after those small red balls exploded, their destructive power was extremely strong. Then, what would happen after this giant red ball exploded? If they didn't know that there was such a space inside this huge ball, no powerhouse would be so bored as to enter this place to explore. What exactly was in that huge palace in front of him? Filled with curiosity, Yang Tian and the equally curious little blue dragon on his shoulder flew towards the huge palace due to the gravitational force at the center of this space. Miraculously, when they were 1,000 meters away from the palace, the strong gravitational force suddenly disappeared. Although the gravitational force disappeared, Yang Tian's body still followed the inertia and kept getting closer to the huge palace. The huge palace outside was built with white stone. The palace in front of Yang Tian, on the other hand, was built with dark green stone. However, it was smaller than the palace outside and didn't occupy as much space. One white, one black, two different colored buildings. Was there any relationship between them? In a situation where there was no gravity, Yang Tian quickly flew above the palace. This palace had a gravitational force. When Yang Tian arrived above the palace and was 1,000 meters away from the highest point of the palace, he was attracted by a gravitational force and slowly fell. The gravitational force was obviously coming from the palace, but it wasn't very strong. When Yang Tian fell, he was like a feather, fluttering in the wind. Looking down from above, the palace's appearance was very simple. It was rectangular, and the outside of the palace was full of thick stone pillars. The stone pillars were carved with all kinds of patterns. There were exotic beasts bearing their fangs and brandishing their claws, as well as unknown plants and flowers. The closer he got to the palace, the clearer it became. In Yang Tian's eyes, the palace occupied more of his vision. A few minutes later, Yang Tian landed on the side of the palace. The ground was very clean. It was paved with black stone slabs, and not a single stone chip could be seen. After landing, Yang Tian carefully sized up the huge palace. Although there was air in this space, there was no wind. The sound from the outside could not be heard, so it was extremely quiet. Yang Tian could clearly hear his own heartbeat. Now that he was here, he could finally take a breather. Yang Tian immediately took out a football-sized stellar crystal from his storage bracelet and handed it to the little blue dragon. Although the little blue dragon's body was small at this time, it hugged the stellar crystal that was even bigger than its body. It landed on the ground nimbly and started eating. Ha! When the little blue dragon gnawed on the stellar crystal, the sound it made was very clear, and it traveled very far. As for Yang Tian, he sat down and rested on the cool stone slabs with his hands behind his head. The injured Yang Tian and the little blue dragon both needed some time to recover. Yang Tian did not plan to explore the palace immediately. What if there were powerful exotic beasts inside? It was better to recover from his injuries and adjust his condition first. The large amount of stellar crystals he collected outside was just right for him to use now. After closing his eyes, Yang Tian started to organize the energy in his body. His chest was injured, and when the power of the dragon orb circulated in his body, it was not so smooth, and it was even a little painful. Now, other than the power of the dragon orb, Yang Tian could clearly feel a strange energy flowing in his body. This energy gave him a very intimate feeling, as if it had appeared in his body out of thin air. It was the appearance of this energy that allowed Yang Tian's injured body to recover. It was like a miraculous genetic medicine, allowing the cells to quickly divide and reassemble into new organs. It was simply too miraculous. Was this the power of the bloodline? After closing his eyes for a moment, Yang Tian couldn't help but think of the situation when he was about to die. Also, how did this energy appear? The black-robed masked man, whom he had met once on Earth, poked him on the forehead, and he woke up. Then, this energy was born. In this short process, Yang Tian did not experience it at all. Yang Tian, who was a little helpless, immediately thought that if the humans on Earth were born with this kind of energy, and were able to control it and cultivate it, they would become very powerful even without the energy of beast cores. Those crystal steels on Earth were built by the black-robed masked man. On those crystal steels there were many battle skills and cultivation method. Who knew if there were any cultivation methods related to bloodline? Yang Tian tried hard to recall, and soon after, he shook his head. It was not that he couldn't remember, but that there was no such thing. Thinking of the crystal steels, Yang Tian thought of the young man, named Li Junyang. Who knew what this guy was doing now? Was he looking at those crystal steels honestly? This guy's talent was amazing, and he should have become a high-level warrior by now. Also, his parents on Earth, how were they doing? I've been away for more than a year, I miss them. What about my friends? Also, that little unicorn, under the care of housekeeper Wu, is it doing well? Are there any changes on Earth now? Perhaps it was because he had died once, but Yang Tian now especially missed his parents, home, and Qin Fei. Being the goddess of the superstar divinity temple, is life good? When he thought of his family, friends, and Earth, Yang Tian's thoughts flew very far away, and it took him a long time to pull back. After calming his mind, Yang Tian focused his mind, wanting to control the bloodline power in his body. However, this kind of gentle energy was not under his control at all. After trying a few times, Yang Tian could only give up helplessly. His will was like playing the lute to a cow in front of this bloodline power. At this moment, in a faraway place, Qin Fei was standing on the observatory of the Superstar Divinity Temple, looking at the stars in the distance. This galaxy was very beautiful, but Qin Fei did not appreciate it at all. Her eyes were not focused. The high priest Hong Yujio was like a loyal servant. He stood to the side with his cane, and his head was slightly lowered. It looked like he was dozing off. Suddenly, in front of the observatory, there was a flash of light. Bang! Suddenly, there was a loud sound in the sky above the observatory. The protective shield above was actually broken, and a muscular middle-aged man appeared on the observatory. When Qin Fei turned around and saw the middle-aged man, she called out with some difficulty. Since Qin Fei called him that, this person was obviously the immeasurable Star Master. At this time, Hong Yujio raised his head and glanced at the immeasurable Star Master. Then, he looked up at the sky above the observatory and said calmly, "Immeasurable Star Master, please come through the front door when you come again." Ha ha ha! As soon as Hong Yujio finished speaking, the immeasurable Star Master laughed heartily. Chapter 263. If someone else had barged into the Superstar Divine Temple, Hong Yujio would have already made a move. For example, Ao Chu, who was killed by Yang Tian, had only said a few words before Hong Yujio heavily punished him. At this moment, Immeasurable Star-Lord had arrived, but Hong Yujio didn't have any reaction. The Immeasurable Star-Lord's laughter spread far and wide. In addition to the commotion just now, many temple guards immediately rushed to the star observation platform. A large number of black-armored temple guards surrounded the star observation platform. Hong Yujio waved his hand at these guards, and they immediately let out a sigh of relief. They came like a tide and retreated like a tide. This was the power of a powerhouse. No matter where they went, they would be feared. Seeing the Superstar Divine Temple guards retreat, Immeasurable Star-Lord came to Qin Fei and said with a smile, "Little Fei, don't worry. I went to take a look. That kid called Yang Tian is pretty good. He has already left the Death Star field." Hearing this news, Qin Fei's eyes widened. They were filled with surprise. 3 days passed very quickly. Yang Tian had already recuperated, and the injuries on his body were more or less healed. After absorbing a large amount of star crystals, the energy in his body had become extremely abundant. The little blue dragon was the same. At least, he looked much more spirited than 3 days ago. It was time to take a look at what was inside the palace. The gravity here wasn't very strong. Yang Tian, who was used to walking under the planet's gravity, walked as if he was running. He didn't need to use much strength to run quickly here. Soon, Yang Tian arrived in front of the palace's main entrance. In front of the palace's main entrance, there were 2 domineering statues of exotic beasts. They were more than 10 meters tall. One was a winged exotic beast with a snake-like body. It spread its wings and raised its head, as if it was going to fly into the sky at any time. As for the other exotic beast, it was shaped like a ferocious tiger, but its body was covered in scales. It had 2 horns that curved upwards, and its 4 thick legs rested on the ground. Its body was leaning backwards, as if it was going to pounce at any moment. Although the 2 statues were huge, they were carved very carefully. It looked as if they were real exotic beasts that had been petrified and placed here. After walking past the two statues, there was a stone staircase dozens of meters forward. After walking up the staircase, another 10 meters or so, there was the palace's main entrance. The door was open and it was pitch black inside. He couldn't see the situation inside. Starting from the two strange beast statues, to the two sides of the gate, there were two statues of soldiers holding spears and weapons every few steps. These statues were the size of a real person and the carvings were also very detailed. There were hundreds of statues, and their faces and expressions were all different. Just as Yang Tian stepped onto the stone steps and was about to pass through, a cracking sound suddenly came from the statue. This place was incomparably quiet and the sound of the statue shattering was very clear. Tian immediately stopped his step. Not only were the statues on both sides of the stone steps shattering, but all of the statues had cracks on their surfaces, as if something was sealed inside and was about to break out of the stone. This kind of situation was very strange. Clap! The statues cracked, and the stones on the surface kept falling. They hit the stone floor and made a sound like raindrop. During this process, Yang Tian was surprised to find that after the statues cracked, there were indeed living things inside. After the human-shaped stone statue shattered, a withered human body was revealed. When these dried-up human bodies came out, they opened their mouths and took a deep breath. Their bodies seemed to be inflated and quickly grew bigger. Their wrinkled skin seemed to have absorbed water. Their skin gradually tightened and became glossy. These dried corpses were actually starting to come to life. No, they weren't coming to life. Yang Tian quickly determined that these were all corpses, because he couldn't feel any signs of life from them. Instead, they emitted a sense of decay. This was the smell of death. And these people were all corpse guards. Yang Tian clenched the saber in his hand. Although these corpses had no signs of life, it was definitely not a good thing that they could move. Yang Tian raised his eyes and looked in front of him, then began to slowly retreat. Because it wasn't just the corpse guards in front of the main entrance. There were also a large number of corpse guards with weapons pouring out from the main entrance of the palace. Although these corpse guards didn't have any signs of life, they emitted waves of energy. They were very powerful and could be compared with the level 9 human martial artists on Earth. Although they were just corpses without any signs of life, they were extremely agile and not stiff at all. As Yang Tian was retreating, a large stone fell to the ground behind him, making a loud cracking sound. It turned out that it wasn't just the human-shaped statues that cracked. Even the two gigantic beast-shaped statues had cracked. Two beast-type corpse guards that could move had appeared. Suddenly, the two corpse guards closest to Yang Tian pounced on Yang Tian, stabbing at Yang Tian with the spears in their hand. After these corpse guards had awakened, their middle eyes were emitting a dark red glow. Their expressions were also very ferocious and looked very terrifying. Whoosh whoosh. Facing the two corpse guards that were pouncing on him, Yang Tian quickly slashed out twice with his sword. Two red wind blades were shot out from the blade and slashed at the two corpse guards. The red wind blade was incomparably sharp, and in an instant, it split the two corpse guards in half. What surprised Yang Tian was that even though their bodies had been cut in half, the two halves of the corpse were still moving. Their limbs were still moving, and from the wounds on their bodies, thick, black liquid flowed out. There were no internal organs in their abdomens. Whoosh! Behind Yang Tian, there was suddenly a strong gust of wind. It turned out that the winged serpent had awakened. It flew into the sky and pounced toward Yang Tian. At the same time, the tiger beast on the other side opened its mouth and rushed toward Yang Tian after the rocks on its body had fallen off. Yang Tian kicked off the ground and dodged to the side. Boom! Pung! The winged serpent missed, and its body crashed into the hard stone floor. It shattered the stone floor and sent rocks flying everywhere, and the tiger beast coincidentally crashed into the winged serpent. The two behemoths rolled together and rolled toward the main entrance of the palace. There was a rumbling sound and the ground trembled. A large number of human-shaped corpse guards were crushed to the ground. Their bodies were shattered and they could no longer get up. After Yang Tian dodged to the side, he could not help but laugh when he saw this. It seemed that these corpse guards did not have the ability to think at all. They were all attacking instinctively. They were even worse than low-level earthworms. Yang Tian had already thought of a way to deal with them quickly. After the two behemoth corpse guards rolled for a while, they finally stopped at the entrance of the palace. They then separated and charged toward Yang Tian again. Whoosh! Yang Tian slashed at the winged serpent that had just flown into the air. With a "piu" sound, one of the winged serpent's bat-like wings was chopped off. With only one wing, it could no longer fly. It fell from the sky and heavily smashed into the ground with a "ping" sound. Whoosh whoosh whoosh! Yang Tian no longer cared about the winged serpent. He kept dodging and slashing at the human-shaped corpse guards that were pouncing toward him, as well as the tiger beast. Most of the wind blades that he slashed out were aimed at destroying the legs of these corpse guards. Without legs, although they could still move, they could no longer attack Yang Tian. Chapter 264. Half an hour later, the ground in front of the main entrance of the palace was littered with broken limbs. The strange thing was that these broken limbs, whether it was the body or the hands and feet, were all trembling non-stop. They only stopped moving when the black liquid inside them ran dry. Looking at these broken limbs, Yang Tian frowned and slowly walked towards the main entrance of the palace. When Yang Tian stepped over the tall threshold and walked less than 20 meters under the dim light, there was a rumbling sound behind him. A thick stone door suddenly rose up and locked Yang Tian and the little blue dragon in the main hall. Once the door closed, it formed an enclosed space. It was so dark that one couldn't even see their own fingers. The surroundings seemed even quieter. Boom! 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 Just as Yang Tian was about to think of a way to create his own light source, there was a sudden rumbling sound in the hall. Many torches were lit, and these torches were also very bright. The situation in the main hall appeared clearly in the eyes of Yang Tian and the little blue dragon. This was a very spacious hall. There were many stone pillars in the hall, about 3 meters in diameter. Each stone pillar was engraved with the patterns of exotic beasts or flowers. The burning torches were hanging on these stone pillars. The ground was covered with diamond-shaped stone slabs. They were tightly packed together and their colors varied. When put together, they formed a huge pattern. The ground was at least 30 meters from the dome above. The hall was very spacious. There was a high platform facing the main entrance, and there was a large carved beast seat on the platform. Seeing this seat, Yang Tian couldn't help but imagine a powerhouse sitting on this seat, looking down at his subordinate. Walla! Ka! Ka! When Yang Tian and the little blue dragon on his shoulder were looking at the large seat, suddenly, there was a sound that sounded like metal chains shaking, as well as the sound of human footsteps on the left and right of the high platform. When Yang Tian heard this sound, he immediately turned his head and looked in the direction of the sound. The little blue dragon also opened his eyes wide, his gaze cold. A few minutes later, a stooped man in a black robe walked out from behind a thick stone pillar. He had a red iron chain around his waist and a head of long yellow hair draped over his shoulders. He had several rounds of red iron chains around his waist, and his body was stooped. After this person appeared, several torches near him suddenly flickered a few times. What surprised Yang Tian was that this person did not have any signs of life, just like the corpse guards outside. However, he gave Yang Tian a very strong feeling. His figure was stooped, like an old man who was about to die of old age, but he had the aura of a superior. Yang Tian, who did not know him, had such a feeling when he was just a corpse. Then, how powerful was he when he was alive? His realm was definitely not lower than Gao Yuan's on the Purple Planet and Taigong Hong's. Yang Tian thought to himself. This person walked slowly. From the moment he appeared in Yang Tian's eyes until now, he had been lowering his head. His face was covered by withered yellow hair, so Yang Tian could not see his true appearance. In Yang Tian's heart, although he was already dead and had no signs of life, he was still a person. This person walked slowly and did not come toward Yang Tian. Instead, he walked step by step toward the high platform. Yang Tian clenched the saber in his hand and stared at this person, not knowing what he was going to do. This person walked along the stone steps to the front of the spacious seat, turned around, and sat down in the direction of the main door. After placing his hands on the beast head armrest, he finally raised his head. And Yang Tian finally saw this person's appearance. Yang Tian was shocked. Although this person's skin was dry, his face was very good. When he was alive, he must have been a very handsome person. However, he was missing an eyeball. His left eye seemed to have been dug out by someone, leaving behind a black hole. There were still traces of tearing on the eye socket. As for his right eye, it was like a ruby, emitting a red light. After this person raised his head, he stared straight at Yang Tian. Yang Tian looked at his red eyes curiously and looked at him. This person's eyes seemed to have magic. No, it should be a powerful spiritual power. When Yang Tian looked at this person, his mind was a little unclear. He suddenly received some strange images in his mind. The images were very blurry, but it was a situation from a long time ago. In the vast universe there was a white continent floating. On the continent there were white and gorgeous palaces. In these palaces there were many people wearing white robes, living leisurely in these palaces. The dozens of palaces were not only beautiful, but there were also many kinds of plants growing between them. The trees had strange fruits, and the grass had colorful flowers. In addition to plants, there were all kinds of animals. They lived freely, not worried that someone would hunt them. Although the images in his mind were blurry, Yang Tian saw this scene and felt that it was very beautiful. It was like a paradise in the imagination of humans. Suddenly, one day, a person wearing a black robe came here. He led countless subordinates to attack this beautiful continent floating in the universe. The battle was very tragic. On one side was the invading black-robed people, and on the other side was the white-robed people. The two sides were like old enemies. During the battle, there were no injuries at all. This was because once someone was injured and about to die, they would detonate their body and perish together with the enemy. During the battle, the beautiful palaces on the White Continent were destroyed one by one. In a short period of time, it became a scene of desolation. On the continent, it was a battle between nobodies, but in the sky above the White Continent, it was a battle between two powerhouses. The battle between the two powerhouses went on for an unknown period of time. In the end, the white-robed powerhouse gouged out one of the black-robed powerhouse's eyeballs, and the black-robed powerhouse took the opportunity to kill the white-robed powerhouse. The black-robed expert who had lost an eyeball was incomparably enraged. He refined the white-robed expert's body into countless stellar crystals. Then, he turned the eyeball he had dug out into a huge red mist-like sphere. This person was crazy. Why did he do this? Seeing this, Yang Tian didn't understand the black-robed powerhouse's actions. But soon, he understood. It turned out that the black-robed powerhouse was also heavily injured and on the verge of death. After he was done, he flew into the red sphere he had created with his eyeball and never came out again. Clearly, the black-robed powerhouse hated the White Continent very much. Even if he died, he wanted to turn it into a ruin forever. The red spheres he created with his eyeballs would produce a large number of small red spheres every once in a while. These mist-like spheres would descend and explode, producing lightning that bombarded the floating continent in the air. In this way, there would never be any humans living on this continent. Seeing this, the scene suddenly stopped and Yang Tian woke up. Through this information, Yang Tian finally understood that this huge red sphere was created with the eyeball of a powerhouse, and that the white continent used to be a very beautiful place. When Yang Tian woke up, the one-eyed man suddenly stood up slowly. Clang! The man swung the chain around his waist. The chain suddenly lengthened and swept toward Yang Tian. Chapter 265. The speed of this red metal chain was very fast. Looking at the fast-approaching metal chain that was thicker than a thumb, Yang Tian moved as if he teleported and appeared next to a stone pillar. Because the gravity here was small, Yang Tian's speed was faster. Boom! The metal chain hit the place where Yang Tian was originally standing. A stone slab was smashed into pieces by the iron chain, and gravel splashed everywhere. The power of this blow was very strong. The sound of the impact constantly echoed in the hall, and the entire hall trembled slightly. The one-eyed man on the high platform opened his mouth wide and wanted to make a sound, but from his mouth, he could only make a hee-hee sound, and the expression on his face was very angry. This dead man without a soul actually had emotions? Yang Tian was a little surprised, but he soon found that the one-eyed man's expression was very stiff and unnatural. It turned out that this expression was just an imitation. Perhaps when he was angry in his life, he had such an expression. The soul was dead, but the body was still alive. Whether it was walking, fighting, or expression, it was estimated that it was an instinctive activity of the body, imitating the body when he was alive. This was like a human being who was familiar with a certain action and could do it without thinking, forming a conditioned reflex, the so-called muscle memory. Even if there was no consciousness, the body of this strong man would still make a variety of movements according to the surrounding environment. Just how strong was this person's physical body? Even if he had been dead for a long time, he could still fight, and his strength was so strong. What made Yang Tian feel strange was that the metal chain used by the one-eyed man did not seem to be very long. There were only 2 loops around his waist, not more than 10 meters long. However, the distance between him and the one-eyed man on the platform was more than 10 meters. Why did this metal chain become so long? Could it be a magic weapon? In the fantasy of human beings on Earth, the magic weapons owned by mythical characters were very magical. It seemed to be completely against the laws of science, but in fact, it was just that human beings did not understand it. For example, ancient humans imagined a tool to transmit sound from 1,000 miles away, and a few hundred years later, humans had such tools as mobile phones. As for flying in the sky, diving into the sea, and going to the moon, these humans had already achieved it with science. Therefore, in this vast and boundless universe, there was nothing that could not be done, only unimaginable. It could not be done because human science had not developed to that extent. For magical things like magic weapons, Yang Tian firmly believed that they existed. Just like the sword in Yang Tian's hand called 15, it was actually a magical weapon. Looking at the metal chain in the one-eyed man's hand that could suddenly extend, Yang Tian coveted it. This metal chain could not only be refined into a weapon, but it could also be used as a tool. While Yang Tian dodged and countless thoughts flashed through his mind, the one-eyed man kept the metal chain. Suddenly, the red light in the red eye became much brighter. At that moment, Yang Tian sensed an even more powerful energy fluctuation being emitted from the one-eyed man's body. Yang Tian narrowed his eyes. He held his blade with both hands and slashed at the one-eyed man on the stage. Yang Tian used his mind power for this slash, and the wind blade he sent out was very condensed. The corpse guards outside did not dodge this attack and allowed the wind blade to cut their bodies. In less than half an hour, Yang Tian had made hundreds and thousands of corpse guards lose their ability to attack. This time, the situation was different. In the face of this sharp slash, the one-eyed man's figure suddenly flashed and became blurry. This was a visual effect caused by moving at a high speed. Purring, the red wind blade did not hit the one-eyed man because he had disappeared. The wind blade hit the wide seat. Yang Tian did not know what material this seat was made of. Yang Tian's slash only left a crack on it and did not cut it into pieces. Yang Tian was shocked when his slash missed because the one-eyed man had disappeared from his sight. What a fast speed! Whoosh! At this time, the sound of wind could be heard from Yang Tian's body. Yang Tian kicked off the ground and dodged to the side. Pung! The one-eyed man's metal chain brushed past Yang Tian's body and hit the stone pillar that was 3 meters in diameter. The thick stone pillar was instantly shattered by the metal chain. Many cracks appeared on the surface of the pillar, and it broke from the bottom. Suddenly, the pillar fell down and smashed into the ground. With a boom, it shattered into countless small black stones. The power of this attack was even stronger than the one before. Pa, 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 after the stone pillar collapsed, some large stones engraved with patterns fell from the top, and a few cracking sounds could be heard throughout the hall. Hearing this sound, Yang Tian glanced up. There was a huge crack in the dome above. While the one-eyed man was retrieving the metal chain, Yang Tian quickly turned around and slashed. The corpses that moved by instinct had no consciousness. Although they were very powerful, their reactions were still a bit slow. Purring, the red wind blade that Yang Tian shot out hit the one-eyed man's chest. What surprised Yang Tian was that this man's physical body was terrifyingly strong. The power of the slash only made him take a few steps back. He extended his hand, and the metal chain attacked Yang Tian again. Its speed was much faster than before. Yang Tian quickly dodged. At this time, Yang Tian finally realized that something was not right. The one-eyed man's strength grew stronger with every attack, and his speed grew faster as well. What surprised Yang Tian even more was that there was a faint life aura on the corpse. Yang Tian did not know if people had souls because he had never seen someone who had been dead for a long time come back to life. But why would there be life aura on the one-eyed man's corpse? Although it was very weak, similar to the life aura of an ant, it was still life aura. This could not go on. What if he came back to life? With his methods when he was alive, he could kill Yang Tian with just a finger. The little blue dragon's senses were even more sensitive than Yang Tian's. Without Yang Tian's reminder, it had already noticed the situation on the one-eyed man's body. It jumped from Yang Tian's shoulder and flew into the air, quickly turning into a dragon that was more than 10 meters long. Boom! When the one-eyed man attacked Yang Tian again and Yang Tian dodged, the little blue dragon that was floating in the air opened its mouth and spat out a high-temperature dragon flame at the one-eyed man. Facing the dragon flame that was rapidly approaching, the red light emitted from the one-eyed man's red eye became even more intense, and he disappeared in a flash. Woo! Then, there was the sound of the wind, and the metal chain suddenly attacked from below the little blue dragon and wrapped around the little blue dragon. With such a fast speed, Yang Tian and the little blue dragon did not react at all. After wrapping around the little blue dragon, the metal chain suddenly tightened. Roar! The little blue dragon let out a painful howl as it was wrapped around by the metal chain. Yang Tian was shocked. He flashed to the top of the little blue dragon and slashed at the metal chain, wanting to cut the metal chain. He did not expect that when the blade came into contact with the metal chain, a powerful force would come from above, shaking Yang Tian's hands and making his body fly backward uncontrollably. With a bang, he crashed into a stone pillar. Chapter 266. The red metal chain tightened at a very fast speed. Fortunately, the little blue dragon could transform. Its body became smaller and smaller as the metal chain tightened. When it turned into the original size of a mini little blue dragon, it swayed its tail and a green shadow flashed. It escaped from the red metal chain that had been rolled into a ball. At this time, after Yang Tian hit the stone pillar, he took advantage of the fact that the one-eyed man was not paying attention to him. He jumped on the stone pillar and shot above the one-eyed man's head. He held the sword with both hands and slashed down. This slash did not emit a red wind blade. It was very fast and fell on the one-eyed man's head. Poof! Yang Tian used his maximum strength for this slash. Even the 3-meter thick stone pillar in the hall could be easily cut by his slash. However, when the sword slashed on the one-eyed man's head, the blade only cut less than a centimeter deep and made a trembling muffled sound. The one-eyed man did not feel pain, but his face once again showed an angry expression. He shook his head and threw Yang Tian away with his sword. Yang Tian's body was still flying in the air when the red metal chain flew toward him. Yang Tian was shocked. If he was caught by this metal chain, he did not have the ability to shrink like the little blue dragon. Yang Tian, who was in the air, twisted his waist and rolled to the side. The red metal chain flew past Yang Tian's body and suddenly rolled back. Yang Tian, who had fought with Big Feng, knew the strange way this chain weapon attacked. When the red metal chain flew past him, he waved his sword. Poof! Yang Tian's sword slashed the top of the metal chain and made a strong metal collision sound. The strong collision force once again made Yang Tian's arms numb. The sword in his hand flew out and with a poof sound, it was inserted into a stone pillar next to him. Although he had lost his weapon, he had managed to escape the calamity. After Yang Tian landed, he continued to move at high speed. His figure constantly flashed between the stone pillars, preventing the one-eyed man from locking onto him. Meanwhile, the aura of life emanated from the one-eyed man grew even denser. If this continued, the one-eyed man might be resurrected in less than half an hour. Yang Tian now understood that this handsome one-eyed man must have been a battle maniac when he was alive. He had deliberately created such a huge formation, used his eyeballs to attack the land below, and placed this palace in the red sphere formed by his eyeballs. His main purpose was most likely to attract people who were not particularly strong to this place. Then, through fighting with his corpse, he could slowly activate the consciousness that was left in his corpse. As for whether the person who came back to life was himself, he probably didn't care. All living creatures in this universe, regardless of whether they had intelligence or not, wanted to live and not die. Yang Tian kept moving at high speed, making the one-eyed man unable to lock onto his position. The red metal chain in his hand swayed like a poisonous snake under Yang Tian's close control. Whoosh! The shrunken little blue dragon saw the opportunity and turned into a green shadow, suddenly rushing toward the one-eyed man's red eye. This glowing red eye was the source of the one-eyed man's power. Every time the red light of this eye became stronger, the one-eyed man's power also became stronger. If the one-eyed man's eye could be clawed blind, the one-eyed man would lose his powerful strength. However, in the face of the little blue dragon that suddenly rushed over, the one-eyed man swung the metal chain in his hand and blocked in front of his red eyes. The little blue dragon was blocked by the metal chain and could only change its direction, sweeping past the one-eyed man's ear. During this process, the little blue dragon scratched the one-eyed man's face with its claws, but only left a white mark on his face. Seeing this situation, Yang Tian couldn't help but frown. This guy's reaction speed was too fast, and he was extremely careful about his weaknesses. Even the little blue dragon couldn't sneak attack him. Hee. The one-eyed man, who was swinging the red metal chain, suddenly opened his mouth and made a hoarse voice. Compared to the previous voice, this voice already had some emotions and seemed a little arrogant. The voice was changing, and the one-eyed man's hair and skin were also rapidly changing. Compared to before, there was a big difference. His skin became more lustrous, and his hair wasn't like before, which was like dry grass. He couldn't be hacked to death, he was powerful, he was extremely fast, and he carefully protected his weaknesses. How should he deal with such an enemy? Yang Tian thought quickly. The little blue dragon didn't give up even though its attack didn't hit. It kept moving quickly to attract the one-eyed man's attention. When Yang Tian saw that the one-eyed man had lost his eyeballs and his pitch-black eye sockets, he suddenly remembered that when he left the purple planet, Grand Duke Hong gave him a blue pearl the size of a finger. Thinking of this, Yang Tian's eyes lit up. "Xiaolong, come here," Yang Tian called out. The little blue dragon, who was moving quickly, turned into a green shadow and arrived in front of Yang Tian. Yang Tian took out the blue pearl that Grand Duke Hong gave him from his storage bracelet and pointed at his eye. The little blue dragon immediately understood Yang Tian's meaning and opened its mouth. Yang Tian quickly put the blue pearl into the little blue dragon's mouth. With the blue pearl in its mouth, the little blue dragon turned around and charged at the one-eyed man again. Facing the little blue dragon's attack, the one-eyed man didn't defend himself except for his red eye. When the little blue dragon charged at him again, he used the metal chain to block his red eye again. At the same time, he raised his left hand and slapped at the little blue dragon. Unexpectedly, the little blue dragon suddenly slowed down. The one-eyed man's hand slapped empty air, and the little blue dragon accelerated again. This process was very short, not even in the blink of an eye. When it swept past the one-eyed man's face, the little blue dragon opened its mouth and spat out the blue pearl in its mouth. The blue pearl rushed out and landed in the one-eyed man's pitch-black eye socket. Yang Tian gripped the knife in his hand tightly and hoped that his idea was correct. When the little blue dragon swept past the one-eyed man no longer had a single eye. He had an extra blue eye. This blue eye suddenly lit up and emitted a dazzling blue light. It was as bright as the red eye. Whoosh! When the blue pearl lit up, the one-eyed man opened his mouth wide and threw away the metal chain in his hand. He made a hee-hee sound from his mouth. In this sound, there was no longer arrogance. Instead, there was fear. The one-eyed man didn't use his hands to dig out the blue pearl. Instead, he held his head with both hands and seemed to be in great pain. He opened his mouth even wider and raised his head to make a continuous hee-hee sound. 2 strong rays of light shot out from his eyes. Yang Tian and the little blue dragon both opened their eyes wide. The one-eyed man who raised his head was obviously breathing in. His stomach suddenly bulged and became bigger and bigger. Xiaolong, dodge! Yang Tian suddenly realized what would happen to the one-eyed man who was constantly bulging. The little blue dragon, who was stunned, immediately came back to his senses. He turned into a green shadow and came to Yang Tian's shoulder. Yang Tian took the knife that he pulled out from the stone pillar when the little blue dragon attracted the one-eyed man's attention and quickly rushed to the side of the palace. Boom! When Yang Tian reached the end of the palace and hid behind a stone pillar, his eyes lit up with a strong red light. Then, there was a loud sound. Then, a huge shockwave came. As expected, the one-eyed man's body finally exploded. Chapter 267. The strong shockwave instantly destroyed countless stone pillars. Yang Tian, who was hiding behind the stone pillars, was completely out of control. He was sandwiched between countless stones and kept rolling on the ground. Fortunately, most of the impact of such a violent explosion went towards the sky. The thick dome of the palace was lifted up. The strong shockwave was like a hurricane. It was unknown when it would stop. Tian gritted his teeth and operated the power of the dragon orb in his body, forming a protective shield outside his body to protect himself. After a few minutes, it finally stopped. Crash! Yang Tian lifted the broken stones covering his body and stood up. What appeared in front of Yang Tian's eyes were countless messy piles of broken stones. The huge palace from before was gone. Suddenly, Tian was stunned, because he found that the little blue dragon was actually not by his side. Xiaolong, Yang Tian shouted anxiously. The little blue dragon was not here, which made him very worried. Squeak, squeak! As soon as Yang Tian's voice fell, the little blue dragon's voice came from under a pile of broken stones. Then, a green shadow flashed and appeared on Yang Tian's shoulder. Phew, Yang Tian let out a long breath. It was good that little blue was fine. Yang Tian stepped on the messy broken stones and walked forward. Although the palace was destroyed, the foundation was intact. In the center of the original palace, a large circular pit appeared in Yang Tian's line of sight. Obviously, that was the place where the one-eyed man's body exploded. The strong shockwave of the explosion pushed Yang Tian to the edge of the palace's foundation. The gravitational force came from the palace's foundation. Until now, many broken stones had flown out of the gravitational range of the foundation and scattered in all directions, leaving the gravitational range of the palace's foundation. Yang Tian had just arrived at the edge of the big pit when suddenly, a red light was emitted from inside. A red ball with a diameter of 1 meter appeared in front of Yang Tian's eyes. When Yang Tian saw it, he knew that the red ball was the eyeball of the one-eyed man. The enlarged red eyeball floated in the center of the huge crater. It floated up and down as if it was floating on water, moving up and down with the wave. It looked like a huge ruby. Its surface was smooth, and its insides were filled with blood-like things. As it rose and fell, it emitted intense energy fluctuations. In addition to this red eyeball, the blue bead that Hong Tai Bus gave Yang Tian was also there. It was like a satellite revolving around this large eyeball. This kind of scene was very strange. After such a strong explosion, the two beads actually didn't fly away and stayed in place. Upon seeing the blue bead, Yang Tian recalled what Grand Duke Hong had said to him when he left the Purple Planet. Clearly, Grand Duke Hong had given him this blue bead to use here. Could it be that great-grandfather Hong had already predicted that something like this would happen? That was too amazing. Yang Tian thought about it and felt that something was wrong. This matter must be beneficial to Grand Duke Hong. Otherwise, he wouldn't have said something like help. What benefits? Yang Tian frowned and pinched his chin as he thought. Yang Tian didn't notice that when the little blue dragon saw this red eyeball, its eyes lit up, and it couldn't help but drool from the corner of its mouth. Squeak, squeak. Seeing that Yang Tian still hadn't moved, the little blue dragon finally couldn't help but cry out. The little blue dragon cried out excitedly. It told Yang Tian that this red eyeball emitted a powerful aura of life and contained powerful energy. Although the little blue dragon didn't finish speaking, Yang Tian understood what it meant. This guy wanted to devour this eyeball. Of course, Yang Tian wouldn't object and immediately nodded his head. The little blue dragon's eyes emitted a scorching light as it transformed into a giant dragon. It opened its mouth and swooped down towards the red eyeball. Then, it opened its mouth and sucked the red eyeball into its mouth. The little blue dragon slapped the blue bead with its dragon whiskers and sent it flying towards Yang Tian. Yang Tian raised his hand and caught it. After devouring this eyeball, the little blue dragon swam excitedly in the air. It had never been so happy before, as if it had picked up a treasure. As the little blue dragon swam happily, Yang Tian clearly sensed that the energy fluctuations emitted by the little blue dragon's body were getting stronger and stronger. Of course, Yang Tian was happy that the little blue dragon had become stronger. He grinned and jumped into the big pit. The reason why Yang Tian entered the crater was because he noticed something unusual about the crater. When the hall was still in good condition, there must have been a passageway that led underground at this location. Yang Tian took a look and used the sword in his hand to lift up a large piece of gravel at the bottom of the pit. Sure enough, an entrance was revealed. The entrance was square and there were stone steps extending downwards. The end was pitch black. Seeing this entrance, Yang Tian's eyes widened. He turned his head and said to the little blue dragon, "Xiao Long, stop playing. Let's go in and take a look." Roar! The enlarged little blue dragon let out a cheerful cry. Its body swam twice in the air, and quickly shrank at the same time. After turning into a mini little blue dragon, it landed on Yang Tian's shoulder. The two of them slowly walked down the stone step. The entrance had been blown up, but after walking down for a few dozen meters, the passage was complete. Under the dim light, after making a few turns, a bright light appeared in front of Yang Tian's eyes. Yang Tian quickened his pace. The light came from the torches on both sides of the passage. A stone door appeared in front of Yang Tian's eyes. Yang Tian came in front of the stone door and looked carefully. Then, he placed his hand on the heavy stone door and pushed hard. With a rumbling sound, the stone door was pushed open by Yang Tian, revealing the situation inside. What appeared in front of Yang Tian's eyes was a small stone room. The temperature inside was very low. When the stone door was opened, the high temperature outside rushed in and instantly turned into white steam. The entire stone room immediately became foggy. In the middle of this small stone room, there was a rectangular stone object with a lid on it. It looked very much like a coffin. Yang Tian thought for a while, then placed his hand on the stone lid and slowly pushed it open. Boom! The stone lid made a heavy grinding sound. A corner of the lid was opened, and Yang Tian's eyes widened when he saw what was inside. Because this was indeed a coffin. Inside lay a young and beautiful woman with her eyes closed. The woman's appearance was very beautiful, comparable to Qin Fei. She was wearing clothes made of translucent white gauze, and her beautiful body was faintly discernible. The reason why it was so clear was because on both sides of her waist, there were 2 egg-sized pearls that emitted bright light. Yang Tian looked at this woman and felt that she was very familiar. After thinking for a while, a surprised expression suddenly appeared on Yang Tian's face. Because he finally remembered the huge female statue on the purple planet. The woman in the stone coffin actually looked exactly the same as that statue. At this time, Yang Tian finally understood. So Hong Tai Tong gave him the blue pearl because he predicted that he would come here one day and open this door to find this woman. At the same time, Yang Tian also remembered that this woman was the same as Qin Fei. She was also a goddess of the Super-Star Divinity Temple. This woman did not die. Yang Tian could clearly feel that there was a faintly discernible life aura coming from her body. Yang Tian thought for a while, then pushed open the lid. Once the lid was opened, Yang Tian saw that in the woman's palms, there was a pearl in each of her hands. The 2 pearls, one black and one white, were both egg-sized. The 2 pearls seemed to be made of stone, and there were strange patterns carved on them. Chapter 268. To Yang Tian, this woman was troublesome. How could he take her away? Yang Tian began to think. This woman's body still had fluctuations of life. She wasn't a corpse, so he couldn't put her into the storage bracelet. But after taking her away from here, where would he put her? Yang Tian was in a difficult position. He felt that he couldn't leave this woman alone. Yang Tian reached out and carried the woman out of the sarcophagus. This young woman had soft, light blue hair. Her body was soft and boneless, and her skin was extremely smooth. There was also a faintly discernible fragrance on her body. This fragrance was very strange and smelled very good. It made Yang Tian's heart flutter. This was also an instinctive reaction of a man. Although he wasn't a virgin anymore, Yang Tian's face still turned red when he carried this woman. After carrying the woman out of the sarcophagus, he carefully laid her flat on the ground. Pa! Pa! Suddenly, the 2 pearls in the sarcophagus that were emitting bright light suddenly shattered. Yang Tian looked inside the sarcophagus and felt that it was a pity. If these 2 beads didn't shatter, they could be used as lighting tools in dark places when he was training in the universe in the future. The 2 glowing beads shattered, but the strange thing was that the black and white beads on the woman's hand didn't fall off. It was as if they were glued to her hand. Seeing the woman lying on the ground was incomparably beautiful. Her body was faintly discernible under the thin clothes. Yang Tian's mouth was dry and he forcibly suppressed his instinctive desire. If it were any other man, when faced with this situation, they would probably, after calming down, Yang Tian checked the situation inside the sarcophagus. He found that there was nothing else good inside except for the 2 glowing beads that had already shattered. This stone room wasn't big. It was about 10 meters in length, width, and height. Apart from this sarcophagus, was there anything else hidden here? Yang Tian began to search the stone room. The little blue dragon, who had turned into a mini Xiaolong, also helped. Unfortunately, the man and the dragon were busy for half a day, but they didn't find anything good. During this process, Yang Tian moved the heavy sarcophagus away, even inspecting the base of the sarcophagus. Yang Tian, who didn't gain anything, put the sarcophagus into his storage bracelet. Although the sarcophagus looked rough, it was able to maintain a low temperature. He didn't know what kind of stone it was made of, but it should be something good. After putting away the sarcophagus, Yang Tian planned to leave. He picked up the woman from the ground and walked out. Although it was troublesome, Yang Tian wanted to take her away from this place, and then find a way to settle her down. Yang Tian didn't dare to touch the black and white beads in her hand, because he felt that the reason why she was still alive was because of the 2 round beads in her hand. If he took them away from the woman, she might die immediately. Yang Tian didn't want to mess up the task given to him by Grandfather Hong, although Grandfather Hong didn't tell him in detail. This was also Yang Tian's way of repaying Grandfather Hong and Gao Yuan. As for how to leave this huge red ball after bringing the woman out of the stone room, Yang Tian didn't think about it for the time being. As long as a person was alive, there would always be a way to deal with difficulties. Rumble, when Yang Tian carried the woman out of the underground stone room, the foundation of the palace began to shake as if an earthquake had occurred. Yang Tian immediately quickened his pace. When Yang Tian came out of the underground passage, the ground collapsed with a rumble, burying the underground stone room. It seemed that there was an exquisite mechanism below. After the woman left the stone room, the mechanism would immediately activate and bury the stone room. When Yang Tian left the collapsed pit and found a flat place, he was about to put down the woman in his arms. He looked down and found that the woman had opened her eyes. The woman's eyes were blue, watery, and incomparably pure. This situation gave Yang Tian a big fright. He almost couldn't help but throw the woman in his arms away. The woman's expression was very calm. After opening her eyes, she stared at Yang Tian without blinking. "Oh, I'm sorry." Yang Tian smiled and immediately placed the woman gently on the flat ground. This woman was already awake, so it was easy to deal with. Bringing a person who could move was more convenient than bringing a person who was asleep. However, the woman only opened her eyes and lay motionless on the ground. What was going on? Since this woman had opened her eyes, she must be awake. How could she be motionless? Squeak, squeak. At this time, the little blue dragon let out a cry. It told Yang Tian that there was a problem with the 2 pearls in the woman's hands. Yang Tian also felt that these 2 pearls must have some special effect on this woman. It was either to maintain her life or to seal her away. Yang Tian hesitated whether he should take the 2 pearls from the woman's hands. While he was hesitating, the woman's body also had some changes. She actually trembled slightly. At the same time, the woman's calm face suddenly became a little distorted, as if she was in pain. Seeing the expression on the woman's face, Yang Tian immediately understood what to do. These 2 pearls must have some kind of sealing effect. Yang Tian no longer hesitated. He immediately squatted down and took the 2 pearls from the woman's hands. These 2 pearls, one black and one white, seemed very heavy. After leaving the woman's palm, they broke with a "paw" sound. As soon as the pearls left her body, the woman immediately sat up from the ground and looked at Yang Tian with a sullen expression. This woman was too beautiful. Even if she was angry, she was filled with a seductive smell. "Sorry." Yang Tian looked at the woman's angry expression and scratched his head with a smile. The woman quietly stared at Yang Tian for a while before standing up from the ground. After standing up, a powerful aura suddenly erupted from the woman's body. too powerful. Yang Tian suddenly felt that standing in front of this woman was like facing a mountain that was pressing down on him. He felt a little breathless. Perhaps this was a way for a woman to display her strength. Very quickly, she restrained her aura and became calm. Yang Tian could not help but let out a long breath. The aura of this woman in front of him was even slightly inferior to Grand Duke Hong and Gao Yuan. At this time, the woman looked around and did not immediately speak to Yang Tian. A moment later, she suddenly opened her mouth and spat out a small ring. This small ring seemed to be made of blue crystal, emitting a blue light. After putting the ring on her finger, the woman raised her hand and drew a circle in the air. Her movements were very beautiful. In an instant, a five-colored light appeared from her hand. It was very dazzling. Yang Tian could not help but blink his eyes. When Yang Tian recovered his vision, he was surprised to find that the beautiful woman in front of him had already put on a gorgeous blue robe. The robe covered her beautiful body, which was faintly discernible. In addition to clothes, many exquisite accessories appeared on the woman's body. An invisible, faint majestic aura was emitted from her body. Compared to before, this woman's temperament had changed. Temperament and aura were completely different. Just now, the powerful aura emitted from the woman's body made Yang Tian feel very uncomfortable. But now, feeling the woman's superior and noble temperament, Yang Tian did not feel uncomfortable. The woman's temperament was not something that could be set off by her clothes. It seemed that a long time ago this woman must have been a very powerful woman in the universe. Yang Tian could not help but think of the Superstar Divine Temple. Yang Tian became more and more curious about the Superstar Divine Temple. At the same time, he also thought of Qin Fei. He did not know if Qin Fei would be happy after becoming the goddess of the Superstar Divine Temple. The woman, who had changed her makeup, looked at Yang Tian quietly again and suddenly asked, "What's your name?" The woman suddenly spoke, causing Yang Tian to be startled. After he reacted, he immediately replied, "My name is Yang Tian. What about you?" The woman did not answer Yang Tian's question and said her name. Instead, she said, "Thank you very much for unlocking the seal on my body and allowing me to regain my freedom. What do you want? Maybe I can help you do it." "I want a lot of things," Yang Tian replied. "I want to leave this place. I want to obtain great power. I want to find Qin Fei and let her return to my side. Can you help me achieve these things?" As soon as Yang Tian's voice fell, the woman suddenly laughed and said, "Leaving this place is very simple. It's also very simple to make you very strong. As for the person you want to find, when you become very strong, you can go anywhere and see anyone." Yang Tian nodded. Of course, he understood this principle. In the universe, as long as one became stronger, one would be able to do more and more things. One could even do as one pleased. After the woman finished speaking, she did not ask Yang Tian again. Instead, she raised her hand. Suddenly, a powerful force wrapped Yang Tian and the little blue dragon. While Yang Tian and the little blue dragon were startled, their bodies started to spin uncontrollably, and their vision became blurry. This situation lasted for less than 2 seconds. When his body suddenly stopped and his vision recovered, Yang Tian found that he had returned to the white world outside the red sphere. He was stepping on white gravel and countless red lightning bolts were falling from the sky. Yang Tian was very familiar with this situation. The countless lightning bolts that struck down from above were blocked by an invisible force. When they were more than 10 meters above Yang Tian's head, they suddenly disappeared. Yang Tian glanced to his side at this time. The powerful woman he brought out of the stone room was looking up at the sky. She used her powerful strength to arrange an energy shield around her to resist the bombardment of the red lightning. When the countless lightning bolts disappeared, one could see that a huge red sphere was still suspended in the sky. Seeing this huge red sphere, a trace of hatred appeared in the woman's eyes. Chapter 269. Seeing the hatred in the woman's eyes, Yang Tian narrowed his eyes. He wondered if she would destroy this giant sphere. Yang Tian had also guessed a little about this woman's hatred. This red sphere was the place where she was sealed, and to her it was like a cage. After the small red mist-like spheres in the sky exploded, the falling lightning disappeared, and the sky became clear again. But this was only temporary. The giant red sphere would continue to create many smaller red spheres. Then, after the small red spheres exploded, there would be more. It was like there was no end to it. Yang Tian did not understand. After the one-eyed man refined the body of the man in white, how could there be so many stellar crystals? Also, how were these stellar crystals formed in the red sphere? These were the questions that Yang Tian had in his mind. Yang Tian did not have the chance to find out more. Suddenly, the woman moved and rushed toward the red sphere in the sky. She was like a ray of light. In the blink of an eye, she disappeared from Yang Tian's sight. A few minutes later, there was a loud boom. There was a violent explosion in the sky. The entire space was instantly covered by a blinding red light. The shock wave from the explosion first fell on this floating piece of land. It was like it was blown by a hurricane. The small white stones and sand on the ground were blown up by the airflow. They formed a red sand mist and rushed toward Yang Tian from the front. Yang Tian was shocked. He turned around and ran. He only stopped when he saw a giant stone pillar in front of him and hid behind it. Boom! Yang Tian had just hidden himself when the violent white sand mist hit the giant stone pillar. The broken stones carried by the wind hit the stone pillars, creating a series of crackling sounds. The stone pillars that weighed several thousand kilograms were blown away and rolled around. Luckily, this white sandstorm was only the shockwave of the explosion. It did not last long. In less than a minute, it began to weaken. Pfft! Yang Tian stood up from behind the stone pillar. He shook his body and short hair and spat out the sand that splashed into his mouth. The little blue dragon on his shoulder was also covered in white dust. It was like a white dragon. It shook its body and shook off the dust on its body. But it was not over yet. After the white sand and dust, dense red fragments began to fall from the sky. Slap! When Yang Tian stood up and spat out the sand in his mouth, a small piece of the red sphere fell not far away from Yang Tian and broke into pieces. Recalling his experience in the red sphere, Yang Tian felt disgusted when he saw these things. One must know that these fragments were the eyeball tissue of the one-eyed man. Most of these red pieces that fell were burning. When they fell, they were like meteorites falling from the sky. When they fell to the ground, most of them were burned black and emitted black smoke. There was the smell of barbecued meat. Yang Tian covered his nose with his hand and kept moving quickly to avoid the pieces of meat that fell from the sky. After a few minutes, it finally calmed down. At this time, Yang Tian looked up at the sky. The scene that appeared in front of him made his eyes widen. His eyes were full of excitement. It turned out that after the explosion of the giant red sphere in the sky, it produced a large number of stellar crystals. These stars were suspended in the sky, reflecting blue light. It looked like a dense cluster of stars in the sky. It looked very beautiful. Great! Xiaolong, let's go up. Yang Tian immediately said to the little blue dragon on his shoulder. Squeak! The little blue dragon let out an excited cry and quickly transformed into a giant dragon. Yang Tian immediately jumped onto the little blue dragon's back. The little blue dragon swayed its body and swam close to the ground. Then, it raised its head and rushed into the sky. After ascending a few hundred meters, Yang Tian was delighted to find that without the giant red sphere, the resistance layer above the land had disappeared. The little blue dragon carried Yang Tian and quickly reached a height of more than 1,000 meters. What appeared in front of him were countless stellar crystals. These stellar crystals were like pieces of gravel. They were irregularly shaped. The big ones were as big as a cow, and the small ones were smaller than a grain of rice. These stellar crystals were attracted by the land below and were slowly descending. In less than half an hour, these stellar crystals would fall to the ground. When the powerful woman brought Yang Tian back to the land, there was not a single person who came here to obtain the stellar crystals. Not even a shadow could be seen. The star mine's owner had a rule that those who came here would only have 1 day at most. Once the time was up, they must leave. Otherwise, they would be severely punished. This was where the star mine's owner was smart. Because of this, not many people would die when they entered this place. It would not cause too much psychological damage to those who came here. After those who came here left, they would adjust their psychological state after a night. It was better that no one was here. No one would compete with Yang Tian for these stellar crystals. Yang Tian could calmly collect them. Collect. Looking at the large amount of stellar crystals in front of him, Yang Tian shouted and opened his storage bracelet. Countless stellar crystals poured into Yang Tian's storage bracelet like a tidal wave. After collecting a piece of stellar crystal, the little blue dragon did not need Yang Tian to remind it. It quickly rushed to the next piece of stellar crystal. The little blue dragon's choice was very reasonable. The stellar crystals it chose were the ones closest to the ground. When these stellar crystals were in the air, they were the easiest to collect. If they fell to the ground and mixed with the gravel, it would be difficult to collect them. As the little blue dragon moved quickly, large amounts of stellar crystals entered Yang Tian's storage bracelet. I'm rich. I'm rich. In the process of collecting these stellar crystals, Yang Tian was so excited that he kept shouting in his heart. One must know that these stellar crystals could not only be used to attract energy, but they were also a hard currency in the universe. Collecting these stellar crystals was no different from picking up money. The little blue dragon's eyes were also shining with excitement. Its speed became faster and faster. Sometimes, Yang Tian was too busy, or when he encountered a piece of smaller stellar crystal, he would directly fly over, open his mouth, and suck the stellar crystal into his mouth. Yang Tian and the little blue dragon both understood that after the huge sphere in the sky disappeared, there would be no more stellar crystals here. The star mine owner who received the news would definitely come here as soon as possible. Yang Tian had already seen the power of the star mine owner. He did not want any accidents to happen. While Yang Tian was collecting the stellar crystals, the powerful woman had already landed on the ground. She was looking up at Yang Tian and the little blue dragon. The corner of her mouth was slightly raised, and her face was full of smiles. Chapter 270. Now that she was so strong, these stellar crystals were no longer attractive to her. The way this strong woman looked at Yang Tian was like how a rich person would look at a beggar picking up coins on the ground. Ha ha ha! After collecting a large number of stellar crystals, Yang Tian couldn't help but laugh out loud. This was a great harvest. He didn't even know how many stellar crystals he had collected. He estimated that it would be enough to buy hundreds or thousands of spaceships. Half an hour later, there weren't many stellar crystals left in the sky. What was left were all small pieces. Yang Tian was no longer interested in spending a lot of time collecting these stellar crystals. He let the little blue dragon land on the ground. As the little blue dragon landed on the ground, Yang Tian naturally saw the powerful woman. This mysterious and powerful woman was looking at him with a smile. The little blue dragon landed beside the woman with Yang Tian on its back. When Yang Tian jumped down from the little blue dragon, the woman looked at Yang Tian and smiled. Now are you satisfied? Yang Tian smiled and nodded. Thank you. The woman shook her head and said, This is what you deserve. It doesn't count as my promise to you. Oh. Yang Tian scratched his head. Now we can leave this place. The woman said to Yang Tian and turned to walk forward. The woman's steps were very fast. Yang Tian could only chase after her with all his might. More than 10 minutes later, the woman brought Yang Tian to the edge of this piece of land. There were many exits at the edge of this piece of land. The woman brought Yang Tian to one of the exits. This exit looked like a small piece of water that was constantly twisting and moving. At this moment, the woman looked at this exit and said to Yang Tian, "The thing you want me to do for you, I will definitely do it." After saying that, she glanced at the little blue dragon on Yang Tian's shoulder and praised, "This pet beast of yours is pretty good." "Squeak, squeak," the little blue dragon responded proudly. Yang Tian also laughed. However, when this woman praised the little blue dragon, Yang Tian was a little worried. If this woman wanted the little blue dragon as her pet beast, then it would be troublesome. Yang Tian knew that he couldn't beat her. Yang Tian was surprised. Ever since he left the Crimson Flame Star, most of the people he met were much stronger than him. This was too much of a blow to his confidence. Fortunately, the woman only praised the little blue dragon and didn't mean anything else. Seeing the worry that flashed across Yang Tian's eyes, the woman smiled and said, "Do you want to obtain great power directly, or do you want me to guide you on the path of becoming a powerhouse?" After saying that, the woman stared into Yang Tian's eyes. Yang Tian didn't avoid this strong woman's gaze and answered without even thinking, "Of course it's a path of becoming a powerhouse." Although Yang Tian really wanted to obtain great power immediately, he still had to save some face in front of this woman, right? Also, only power that was obtained through one's own efforts truly belonged to oneself. Yang Tian obviously understood this principle. In fact, because of this woman, Yang Tian had indirectly obtained great power. Absorbing a small portion of the stellar crystals in the storage bracelet would allow him to advance to the planetary state domain Lord Realm, or even surpass the planetary state and become a stellar state powerhouse. Also, Yang Tian just came out from Earth and didn't know much about the situation in the universe. From Yang Tian's eyes, the woman knew that Yang Tian was telling the truth. She nodded and said to Yang Tian, "If you're done with your business, you can go to planet Kaitra. There's a superstar academy on that planet. With your current state, you should be able to enter that academy. If you really can't show this, someone will see it and help you." After saying that, a purple triangular crystal appeared in the woman's hand. This purple crystal had many mysterious runes carved on it, and it emitted waves of energy wave. One could tell at a glance that it was extremely precious. Yang Tian took the purple crystal from the woman and smiled. "Thank you." After giving the purple crystal to Yang Tian, the woman turned around and walked towards the exit. Yang Tian knew that if he left, he wouldn't be able to see this woman again. He immediately said loudly, "Please wait." The woman stopped and turned around. She looked at Yang Tian with a smile and asked, "Is there anything else?" Yang Tian scratched his head and said, "I still don't know your name." The woman said, "With your current state, you're not qualified to know my name. However, you can call me Goddess." After saying that, the woman smiled and turned around. She walked into the exit and disappeared. Sigh. Yang Tian sighed and turned around. He smiled bitterly at the little blue dragon and said, "I'm being looked down on again. Xiao Long, I'll definitely defeat her in the future." After saying that, Yang Tian narrowed his eyes and his body emitted a strong battle intent. This was the first time that he was looked down on by a woman. Squeak, squeak. The little blue dragon waved its claws and let out a squeak. It said to Yang Tian, "After defeating such a beautiful woman, you can make her your wife." Ha ha ha. After the little blue dragon finished speaking, Yang Tian laughed and walked towards the exit. After entering the exit, the space in front of Yang Tian distorted. Then, a familiar scene appeared in front of his eyes. At this moment, he was surrounded by red magma. Dozens of meters in front of him, there was a teleportation array disk emitting blue light. A subordinate of the star mine was already lying on the ground. The armor on his body had been shattered, and his body was constantly twitching. When this person saw Yang Tian appear, he stretched out his hand to Yang Tian and chuckled. It seemed that he wanted to get Yang Tian's help. Yang Tian thought for a moment, walked past this person, and stepped onto the array disk. The star mine owner had almost killed Yang Tian before. Yang Tian naturally did not have a good impression of the star mine owner's subordinate. Moreover, this person was not a good person. When the blue light in front of him disappeared, Yang Tian appeared in a small town on Lugu planet. There were no particularly tall buildings on Lugu planet. Most of the cultivators in the universe came here to enter the star mine owner's small world and obtain a large number of stellar crystals. After achieving their goal, they would leave. Therefore, the star mine owner did not spend much effort to build this planet. This small town was different from the small town Yang Tian had first come to Lugu planet. It was early in the morning, and a large number of people were gathering at the small management office. When he saw these people, Yang Tian could not help but laugh. He could imagine what kind of situation these people would be in when they went to the small world. There would be no more red spheres in the sky, and there would be no more lightning falling. Of course, there would not be a large number of stellar crystals being produced. Yang Tian had only taken a few steps in the small town when he noticed that someone was following him. There were not many people in each small town. Once a stranger appeared, they would be monitored. Yang Tian thought that he had to leave this place immediately. After looking at the surrounding buildings, Yang Tian turned around and walked along the street toward a circular stone building about 3 meters tall. 7 Light Rain had told Yang Tian that these circular buildings in the small town were teleportation points. Chapter 271. On the Legu planet, the price of teleporting between towns was very cheap. However, teleporting from one planet to another was ridiculously expensive. This was, of course, a method used by the star mine's owner to control and amass wealth. Yang Tian didn't remember the name of the town he had been in previously, but he knew its serial number. After entering the teleportation area of this town, Yang Tian took out a piece of star gold and handed it to the manager. Go to town 703. The manager of this teleportation area was a skinny middle-aged man. When he saw the star crystal in Yang Tian's hand, he didn't reach out to take it. Instead, he waved his hand and said, "1 piece of star gold isn't enough. Isn't the stipulated price 1 piece of star crystal?" Yang Tian asked, puzzled. The skinny middle-aged man laughed. "This price was set many years ago. Now, it's 2 pieces of star crystal. If you don't want to, you can leave." When he said this, the skinny middle-aged man appeared very arrogant. Yang Tian understood that this was the manager raising the price in private. This kind of situation happened everywhere. Yang Tian was helpless. He could only take out another piece of star crystal from his storage bracelet and hand it to the skinny middle-aged man. When he saw the 2 pieces of star crystal, the skinny middle-aged man smiled and took them from Yang Tian's hands. Then, he turned around and made some adjustments on the teleportation disc. "It's ready now. Teleport to town 703, the skinny middle-aged man said to Yang Tian after adjusting the teleportation disc. When Yang Tian walked towards the teleportation disc, he saw the skinny middle-aged man put one of the pieces of star crystal into his pocket. What a blatant act of corruption! He wondered if the star mine's owner knew about this. Yang Tian shook his head helplessly. When Yang Tian walked out of the teleportation disc, he had already arrived at town 703. He appeared at the crossroads where he had been last time. Yang Tian walked out of the array disc and got off the teleportation platform. He looked around and headed straight for 7 Light Rain's store. At this time, 7 Light Rain was lying on his counter with one hand supporting his head. His eyes fell on the spaceship models on the transparent counter, and he looked a little lonely. This was because she thought that Yang Tian was already dead. The people who should have returned had already returned 2 days ago. However, among these people, she did not see Yang Tian's figure. She did not even see the little blue dragon. While Seven Light Rain was staring at the spaceship model in a daze, her vision suddenly turned dark. Someone had blocked the light from outside. Seven Light Rain woke up, and a habitual smile appeared on her face. She raised her head, thinking that there was a customer. What appeared before her eyes was Yang Tian's smiling face. Ah! When she saw that it was Yang Tian, Seven Light Rain couldn't help but scream and stand up. Yang Tian chuckled. "Beauty, long time no see. Why are you still alive?" Seven Light Rain couldn't believe her eyes. After saying that, she even raised her hand and rubbed her eyes. Squeak squeak. At this time, the little blue dragon lying on Yang Tian's shoulder cried out twice. It felt that it was being ignored again. "Little guy, you're also fine. That's great." Seven Light Rain nodded at the little blue dragon. Only then was the little blue dragon satisfied. "I just came out. Don't tell anyone," Yang Tian said again. Then, he winked at Seven Light Rain. "Oh, so that's how it is. Then you must not tell anyone. This is against the rules. If you get caught, you'll be in trouble," Seven Light Rain said and glanced outside the store. Seeing that no one was paying attention to her store, Seven Light Rain was finally relieved. She then whispered to Yang Tian, "You dared to stay inside for so long. When you came out, did you bribe those managers?" Yang Tian shook his head. Then, he turned around and closed the door. Once the door was closed, the automatic lights inside lit up. At this time, Yang Tian took out a large pile of stellar crystals from his storage bracelet. Seeing so many stellar crystals in front of her, Seven Light Rain couldn't help but open her eyes wide in surprise. This was the first time she had seen so many stellar crystals. She opened her mouth wide and was speechless for a moment. Yang Tian pointed at the stellar crystals and said with a smile, "These stellar crystals are all yours now." Yang Tian naturally couldn't give her 5% of the stellar crystals he obtained. Because it was too much, and Yang Tian couldn't bear to do so. The stellar crystals he took out now, if converted to a standard volume, would be more than 1,000 pieces. For Seven Light Rain, 1,000 pieces of star crystals was equivalent to her income for a few years. "You've gained a lot this time," Seven Light Rain said excitedly. Yang Tian only nodded with a smile. Seven Light Rain immediately took out a jar-shaped storage tool from under the counter and put all the stellar crystals that Yang Tian gave her into this crude-looking storage tool. During this process, Yang Tian noticed that there were many runes engraved on the surface of this jar-like storage tool. After putting away the stellar crystals, Seven Light Rain looked at Yang Tian with a smile and said, "Now you have the money to buy my spaceship, right?" Yang Tian nodded with a smile and said, "Of course. That's great." Seven Light Rain shouted happily. For her, this was another source of income. Then, Seven Light Rain took out dozens of spaceship models from the counter and let Yang Tian choose. Boom! Just as Yang Tian was looking at the spaceship models, a loud noise suddenly came from outside. Then, the ground shook, and Seven Light Rain's store also shook. What was going on? Yang Tian frowned. Just as Yang Tian turned around and was about to open the door and go out to see what was going on, he heard many people running outside. There were also some voices. "Why are you running? There's something interesting to see. The star mine owner is fighting with a woman. They were the ones who caused the commotion just now." "Yeah. I heard that the woman even destroyed the star mine owner's small world. From now on, there won't be any more stellar crystals." "That can't be. If that's true, then it's such a pity. We have to find a way to leave this place, but the teleportation fee is too expensive." Before he opened the door, Yang Tian could already hear many of these loud voices. Yang Tian immediately opened the door and saw people running on the street. They were all running toward the direction of the explosion. Boom! At this time, there was another loud noise. This time, the commotion was even more violent than the previous one. Moreover, it was closer to Town 703. Yang Tian laughed and thought to himself, It would be great if the goddess could kill the star mine master. Even if the star mine owner didn't die, under such circumstances, the star mine owner wouldn't notice him. It was a good time to leave. Although he had such thoughts in his mind, Yang Tian immediately ran toward the direction of the sound. Like many cultivators in the universe, if there was a chance to see a battle between experts, they definitely wouldn't miss it. Yang Tian's speed was very fast, surpassing most of the cultivators on this planet. Soon, he ran out of the town. More than 10 minutes later, Yang Tian arrived at the location of the battle between the female expert and the star mine owner. At this time, the battle was about to end. Chapter 272. What appeared in front of Yang Tian was a huge pit. The female expert, who had just separated from Yang Tian, was standing at the edge of the pit. The breeze blew her gorgeous robe, making her look like a goddess from the divine realm. Of course, this was what Yang Tian felt. Yang Tian, who had come from Earth, had heard a lot of mythical stories. Yang Tian did not know if the other onlookers felt the same way. However, at this moment, all the men's eyes were filled with a stunning light. This woman was not only powerful, but also very beautiful. Cough, cough, cough. Suddenly, a coughing sound came from the pit. Then, a figure jumped out of the pit. This person was very fast. After he rushed 100 meters into the air, he suddenly turned around and pressed down. During this process, he suddenly stretched out his hand and slapped down at the female expert. The powerful palm force produced an ear-piercing whistling sound. In the face of this powerful palm, the female expert did not move at all. No. Yang Tian soon saw that the woman had already dodged. However, her speed was extremely fast. She had left her original position, but her figure was still there. Even Yang Tian's visual nerves could not keep up with the woman's speed. With a boom, the palm force that came from the sky slapped a huge palm print on the hard ground. The place where the woman had been standing was the center of the palm print. The person who came out of the pit and slapped the female expert from the sky was the star mine's owner. After he landed, he did not look at the huge palm print he had slapped out. Instead, he looked around for the woman who had disappeared. Although he was far away, Yang Tian could still see the panic on the star mine's owner's face. All of a sudden, a figure flashed past the star quarry's master. The speed was so fast that even Yang Tian could only see an afterimage. The afterimage flashed and suddenly stopped. At this time, the star mine's owner had his mouth wide open and was in a daze. The woman who was passing by him suddenly stopped. Ugh! Suddenly, the star mine owner let out a groan and fell to the ground with a thud. When his body came into contact with the ground, it actually shattered into pieces. The powerful star mine master was actually dismembered. What surprised Yang Tian was that the star mine owner was not dead yet. His broken body began to melt like a piece of wax being baked. Then, it began to reassemble. The woman just watched quietly without any expression on her face. No one knew what she was thinking. Soon, the shattered body of the star mine owner was reassembled. After his rebirth, the aura emanating from the star quarry's owner was clearly much weaker. When his body recovered, the naked star mine owner looked at the woman. Suddenly, he turned and ran. He no longer had the energy to continue fighting. Purring! Seeing that the star quarry master was trying to escape, the woman attacked again. She sent a palm strike at the fleeing star quarry master. The palm strike reduced the star quarry master's body into a bloody mist. The bloody mist scattered with the air current caused by the palm strike. Yang Tian's eyes widened again. It turned out that the star mine owner was not dead even after being injured to such an extent. The flesh and blood that fell to the ground began to reassemble. Soon, the star mine owner's body appeared again. At this time, the aura emitted by the star mine owner was much weaker than before. It seemed that every time he recovered, he would consume a lot of energy. The star mine owner, who had recovered his body again, didn't even have the thought of escaping. He sat on the ground. At this time, the woman slowly walked toward the star mine owner. Looking at the woman getting closer and closer to him, the star mine owner's eyes were filled with horror. His body couldn't help but tremble. This was because if his body was seriously injured again, he wouldn't be able to recover. The star quarry master was shocked, and so was Yang Tian. The process of the star quarry master coming back from the dead was just too miraculous to him. Could it be that this was the ability of life forms after they evolved? Yang Tian knew that the so-called realm was actually the level of life. The higher the realm, the stronger the life force. Constantly becoming stronger was, in fact, constantly evolving. It could allow one to adapt to more complex environments and have stronger destructive power and life force. Yang Tian's current body realm was still at the planet grade, so he couldn't understand how powerful a star-grade body was. The woman soon arrived in front of the star mine owner and looked at him coldly. At this time, the star mine owner lowered his head and smiled bitterly. "If I had known this would happen, I would have killed you instead of sealing you." After the star mine owner finished speaking, the woman smiled and said indifferently, "It's useless for you to regret it now. However, if you tell me the instigator, I will let you go today." Ha ha ha! As soon as the woman said that, the star mine owner burst into laughter. At this time, the woman was still expressionless as she looked at the star mine owner quietly. After the star mine owner stopped laughing, he said, "It turns out that you didn't kill me once. Instead, you destroyed my body time and time again so that I would be reborn again and again. You made me weaker and weaker so that I would tell you this secret. However, this is impossible." After saying that, the star mine owner closed his eyes. Then, his body melted again. Soon, it turned into a pool of liquid that seeped into the earth and rocks on the ground. This time, the star mine owner was completely dead. There was no sign of life left. The star mine owner's method of suicide surprised Yang Tian once again. During the process of the star mine owner's self-destruction, the woman just watched quietly. Even a powerful person like her couldn't do anything to a person who was determined to die. After the star mine owner died, the woman glanced at the place where Yang Tian was. Then, her body turned into a stream of light and rushed into the sky. She flew directly into the universe just like the black-clothed masked man had left Earth. Yang Tian wasn't the only one who was watching this battle. Some people saw the woman leave and sighed with envy. When will I be able to travel the universe with my physical body like her? This kind of sigh expressed the thoughts of many cultivators in the universe. Even Yang Tian felt the same. Like this goddess, who could travel the universe with her physical body, was the true powerhouse in the universe. After the woman left, the spectators curiously walked toward the place where the two people had fought. Looking at the traces left by the two people, these people kept sighing. Yang Tian looked at all this curiously. Suddenly, someone shouted, "The star mine owner is dead. What are we waiting for?" Yes. There must be a lot of star crystals in the star mine owner's manor. What are we waiting for? Let's hurry over as soon as possible. Hearing this, Yang Tian pursed his lip. The person who said this obviously had a purpose. Yang Tian naturally didn't want to get involved. He turned around and walked back. Soon, the sound of fighting came from behind Yang Tian. With the death of the star mine owner, no one could control this planet. In a world without laws and rulers, the strong were respected. Yang Tian could imagine that if there was no other powerhouse to continue ruling Lugu planet, it would soon become extremely chaotic. The chaotic situation quickly spread. When Yang Tian returned to the town, he found that the town had become chaotic. 7 Light Rain was still in his shop. When Yang Tian returned, he closed the door. Soon, the sound of cultivators fighting could be heard outside. At this time, people were fighting everywhere in the town. the streets were full of corpses and blood. It should be known that for so many years, the master of Star Mine and his subordinates had been oppressing the miners who came to this planet. The grudge between the two sides had been very deep. If it wasn't for the Star Mine owner's strength, these miners would have already exploded. They wouldn't have waited until now. With the death of the Star Mine owner, the conflict was immediately aroused. After the miners received the news of the Star Mine owner's death, they immediately attacked the management offices in the various towns. The subordinates of the Star Mine owner also immediately united to resist the attacks of the miners. During this process, the miners also killed each other in order to snatch star crystals. Hearing the sounds coming from outside, Seven Light Rain was very scared. Fortunately, Yang Tian was here, so she felt at ease. Yang Tian heard the shouts outside and frowned. He knew that even if he hid in the house, he couldn't avoid it. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Nights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.